Everyone, I'm Margaret Smith, the Chair of the Planning Commission, and I am calling to order the meeting of March 12th, 2014. Mr. Paulson, would you read the roll, please?
Thank you. Commissioner Erickson?
Here.
Commissioner Sayoc?
Here.
Commissioner Badami?
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Here.
Commissioner Talis-Four?
Here.
Vice Chair Birch?
Here.
Chair Smith?
Here. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and Commissioner O'Donnell, if you could lead it. You can see we have a full crowd this evening, so let me just tell you some preliminary information. The town of Los Gatos encourages all of you to be here and to make comments. There is more than one way, however, to submit your comments on an item. One way is that you can submit written communication submitted to the staff. If it's before a meeting on an agenda item, it's always included in our packet, and we review it. You can also this evening, on an agenda item, come up and submit a card. They're behind your benches. It states your name and address, and you may address the commission for up to 3 minutes. There's also what we call verbal communication, and we accept testimony up to 3 minutes on an item or on a matter that is not on the agenda this evening. So those are the 3 ways that you can participate in this process. We have no minutes to approve this evening. Is that correct, Mr. Paulson? We'll have them next meeting. Do we have any written communications?
There were 3 desk items, one for item number 1, one for item number 2, and one for item number 3.
Do all the commissioners have the desk items, and have you reviewed them? Okay, thank you. Are there any requested continuances?
No.
All right. In addition to service on the commission, the commissioners also serve on subcommittees. Do we have a report on any subcommittee meetings that took place between our last meeting and today? There are no such meetings. All right, now we have the verbal communication part of our agenda, and I don't see any cards submitted to me, so I'm going to assume that no one wants to make a comment on an item that is not on our agenda items. We will now take agenda item number 1, and that's a continued public hearing. So there was one matter. We're going to consider architecture and site application S13089 for property located at 16428 Englewood Avenue, a matter that was heard at the February 12th, 2014 meeting and continued to this evening to give the applicant an opportunity to perhaps make some changes in the design. Could I have a show of hands on how many commissioners have visited the property? And are there any disclosures? Seeing none, Ms. Avila, could you give us a report?
Good evening. As Chair Smith mentioned, the project was last considered by the Planning Commission on February 12th. The Commission continued the matter to this evening and requested that the applicant reduce the size and massing of the second floor, shift the detached garage further from the north side property line, and work with the adjacent neighbor who had raised some concerns about privacy and visual impact, and also a concern about noise due to a utility closet being located in the side yard. The applicant, including the project architect and the property owner, did meet with the adjacent neighbors and shared their plans and the adjustments that they'd made. Their desk item that you received is from the neighbors acknowledging the changes that were made to the plans and letting you know that they agreed on those revisions. The staff report includes a detailed list of all the changes that were made architecturally to the exterior elevations and the floor plans. The things that were made, the changes that were made that were done for the neighborhood concerns. We're shifting the breezeway and the detached garage further from the side property line, reducing some of the second floor. The utility closet was removed from the side yard. The things that were in the utility closet are now internal to the residence. And also a second floor window that looked towards the neighbor's property. The applicant has agreed to do opaque glass and to have the window hinged on the right so that it opens towards the rear yard rather than a neighbor's house. That's all the staff has this evening for a report, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions, commissioners? Seeing none, we will now open the public portion of the public hearing and give the applicant an opportunity to address the commission for up to 5 minutes. And I call Gary Colsat. Mr. Colsat, could you step to the podium, give your name and address, and we're happy to hear from you.
Good evening. I'm Gary Colsat, and my address is 51 University, Suite L, Los Gatos. I want to thank you for a productive and sometimes contentious, but I think good-spirited meeting we had last month about this house. By continuing this item to this 1 month up, it gave us a realistic deadline that we could meet and modify the house, and also meet with the neighbors in a timely manner, and then be able to redo all the plans and get them back into you for this meeting. So the main items that were concerns of the commission were pretty clear to us, and I think in the end what we have is a house that's better designed. We did I think the report lists every item that we did. It's very specific, so I don't need to go over every item, but I just wanted to highlight the majority of the things that we did. And I have a couple of graphics that show the before and afters, and I think it's pretty significant. I'll let Mr. Paulson turn that on for me. Thank you, Joel. That's as good as it's going to get. What I have here is an aerial view of the rear, taken from the rear left of the house, and on the top picture is what we originally submitted, and the second one on the bottom is the revised. What we basically did was take a whole bedroom suite from upstairs and placed it downstairs. We have a 5-bedroom house and an office. We used to have a 6-bedroom house, so now we have a dedicated home office, which actually works better for our marketing campaign. But more importantly, we reduced the overall proportions and the ratio of the first floor and second floor. We're more to a, we're about 40%, and we were 45%. Let me double check those numbers. But essentially, we took 310 square feet from the second floor and put it on the first floor, and we also reduced the overall size of the house by 50 square feet. By taking down that second story, the second story bedroom, excuse me, let me start over. By removing that bedroom from the second floor, we were able to actually move the whole second story setback back to almost 20 feet. It averages, it's 18 to 20 feet, and it was at 14 feet. As you recall, we were asking for exception to the side setbacks. We still are asking for those for the first story, but not for the second. And the neighbors are happy to see what we've done. There's another picture that shows it from eye level, and I think the difference is pretty clear. What we've done is pretty significant. We've helped the shadow study, the sun impact, as well as the view from their rear yard. They can see much more open, and I think that we've addressed all of your concerns. Did the time go back?
Mr. Paulson, what happened to that time? I saw it go yellow and then green.
I was wrapping up.
What happened was We noticed the timer wasn't turned on exactly on time.
Okay, perfect.
So we,
So if you need more time, Mr. Colsack, go ahead.
I just want to maybe summarize by saying, reminding everybody of, we have this great oak tree in the middle of the property, and it severely impacts everything we do. We were able to move the garage a little bit away from the side setback and still allow us to drive in and out of that, but we've got a large tree on the other side as well. So we're really pinched between three very significant trees, the oak tree being the grand dame, and it's quite a beautiful tree, and we're highlighting this tree. It hides the house quite well, and compared to the other homes on the street, being that far back, over 100 feet back, it's really not going to have the impact that it would if it was close up.
All right, thank you, Mr. Colsack. Are there any questions? Yes, Commissioner O'Donnell.
Mr. Colsack, you got rid of supposedly one bedroom, but instead of that bedroom, you now have an office. I guess I'm confused. Can't that office be used as a bedroom?
It can be, yes. We have the access. It can still be a 6-bedroom.
So it's a 6-bedroom home, and it's 4 baths, and it's about 4,500 square feet?
That's correct. It has two living areas, formal dining and informal dining.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Telesfor.
Yeah. Can you tell me, we talked a little bit last time about the shadowing
Yes.
on the neighbors. Has that changed?
It has reduced. Yes, it has.
It has reduced?
Yes.
Okay. Was that reflected in the new plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We didn't do it before and after in the new plan, so you have to kind of go back and forth.
Okay. I should have looked.
So.
Thanks.
Yes, Commissioner Sayak.
Mr. Colsack, it's good to see you again.
Thank you.
Could you confirm, you alluded to it, but I just wanted confirmation that you did speak with the other adjacent neighbor as well when you presented these plans? And did they have any comments?
The neighbor, you're speaking of the neighbors as you're viewing the property to the right-hand side?
To your right-hand side, correct?
No, we spoke to them after the meeting, and they actually were supportive of the house the way we had last time.
Okay.
And we told them that what we were doing would actually improve their side as well.
Okay,
So
thank you.
we didn't reach out to them.
Any more questions? Mr. Colsack, there's no one else who has submitted a card, so if you can think of anything more you'd like to share with us, you have an additional 3 minutes. If not, I'll close the public portion of the public hearing.
I think I'll just let it go.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Colsack. Any commissioner want to make a motion, begin a discussion? Yes, Commissioner Telesfor.
Hi. I think that the applicant has met, as far as I'm concerned, has met what our discussion was at the last meeting about this proposal. I don't know how that I would consider it contentious, but I think that what we have here is a much better outcome for both neighbors and as the applicant said for himself, he thought that some of the changes really worked better. So with that in mind, I would be happy to make a motion unless somebody wants to have any other comments.
Commissioner, yes. Bondami.
I would be in support of a motion. I see that the massing was reduced on the second floor. I was happy to see that the issues with the privacy and solar access impacting the neighbor to the side was resolved, and I would be in support.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
I appreciate what they did, and that was very responsive to what we'd asked. I'm troubled by a 4,500 square foot house in that neighborhood. I'm troubled by a 6-bedroom house in that neighborhood. On the other hand, they've done everything we've asked. The neighbors don't object to it. I've hated to see over the last 40 years the size of all the homes in Los Gatos just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I'm not happy with that. On the other hand, I can't blame them. They've done what they've been asked to do and what they're allowed to do. But I did want to say that I think the house is too large for the neighborhood, and I think because of that, the neighborhood will change, and it won't be too large for the neighborhood eventually. Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, I myself will make a comment, and I just want to tell the the owner and Mr. Colsat that we do appreciate the efforts that you made, and it also says to me that many times it is beneficial for a continuance to give an opportunity for all the parties to work through some of the issues. I find it a well-designed home, as I said last time, and we look forward to that street being more beautified by it, because it's already a lovely neighborhood. With that, I think Commissioner Talasfore, you were prepared to make a motion.
Yes, in response to Commissioner O'Donnell, I appreciate what you're saying, and it is something we've always struggled with. I think one thing that's really difficult is that it's been hard for us to, when we say to reduce something, we don't ever, it's hard to give a number, and yet when we don't give a number, you know, we wrangle with that back and forth. So I'm not sure what the answer is. Maybe that's something we need to discuss as a commission. But would you like to comment?
Yeah, I'd just like to comment by saying what we find is that when we say your second floor is too big, they take the space and put it on the first floor. So there is no, I mean, 50 square feet is what was reduction. So there's really no reduction here. But I wouldn't quarrel, and I will support your motion. I'm just troubled by the pattern.
Right. I totally understand. So with that, anyway, I will make a motion to approve architecture and site application S-13-089 at 16428 Inglewood Avenue. I can make the findings required by CEQA, and this is in Exhibit 11 in our staff report, and also the required findings for the demolition of a single-family residence, which in fact says that the housing stock will be maintained and the existing structure has no architectural or historic significance, and the property owner does not desire to maintain the structure as it exists, and the economic utility of the structure is poor and not viable to remodel or expand. I can make the required findings for reduced side setbacks as required by Section 2910, 365-3 of the Town Code for reduced setbacks, mostly because the neighbors, when I looked at the site plans for the neighborhood, I realized that many of them were about equally spaced on that site plan. So, and we can do that. We don't have to do that, but I would approve that at this point. And I can make the findings for required compliance with the residential design guidelines. I think that is it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Oh,
Commissioner
wait,
Birch?
I'm sorry. And a consideration of the review of architecture and site. So with that, I'll look for a second.
Thank you. Commissioner Birch?
I will second the motion and also thank the applicant and the architect for making all the requested modifications to the project.
Any discussion? Yes, Commissioner Sayak.
I will be supporting the motion. I do want to just state for the record that one of the required findings, I know it's in the staff report, but I do want to highlight that the finding for the side setback, one of the main reasons is because it is a non-conforming lot. I know that we've had many applications come before us asking for reduced setbacks, and I just want to make it clear that this is my reason for doing so in this application.
Thank you. No further comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We show a unanimous vote. Mr. Paulson, are there appeal rights?
There are. Anyone who's not satisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission can appeal that decision to the Town Council. The forms are available in the clerk's office upstairs. There is a fee for filing the appeal, and the appeal must be filed within 10 days.
Thank you. I'd also like to make a comment to those who are in the audience. I see there's a large stack of cards for item 4, and I just want to tell you that item 4 is last on the agenda, and you're probably looking at, and I'm just guesstimating, an hour before we're going to hear that matter. So it could be much longer than that, but that's my guesstimate at this point. So if anyone needs to run an errand or check on childcare or anything, I just wanted to tell you it's okay to step outside and use your cell phone or do what you need to do. Thank you. Now I'd like to call agenda item number 2. and that is considering architecture and site application S13032, requesting approval to convert an existing 5-unit multifamily residence into a single-family residence for property located at 16 Clifton Avenue. May I have a show of hands for the commissioners who visited the property? And are there any disclosures? Ms. Mosley, I believe you'll be giving us the staff report.
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. The 7,000 square foot property is located in the Broadway Historic District and currently contains a 5-unit pre-1941 multifamily residence with a small attached garage. The original structure was a single-family residence that was converted into 5 separate units at least 50 years ago. The existing use, parking, and structure are non-conforming. The applicant is proposing to bring the number of units and associated parking spaces into conformance by converting the structure into a single-family residence with an attached secondary dwelling unit. In addition, the applicant is proposing to add 232 square feet to the upper floors of the main residence to provide better flow within the residence, while abandoning 254 square feet on the lower living floors. The conversion of the multifamily residence to a single-family residence with attached second unit would create the largest single-family residence in the immediate neighborhood and cause the residence to exceed the allowable FAR by 1,638 square feet, and that the FAR only applies to single and two-family homes, not multifamily homes. The existing multifamily use is nonconforming in the R1D zone, in that the zone does not allow multifamily uses by right or by CUP. The applicant's justification for the project is that the proposed modifications would have little to no impact on the massing or visibility of the residence, and that the reduced intensity of the property will significantly reduce the parking impacts along the street, which are a concern for many of the neighbors. Excuse me. With the exception of the small 5-unit complex across the street, the remaining properties in the neighborhood are single or two-family uses. And while the proposed project would create the largest single-family home with the largest FAR, it would create a use that is more compatible with the types of residential uses on Clifton Avenue and Broadway, while having a minimal effect on the historic residence. Based on the reduction of the housing stock and the FAR and square footage concerns, staff does recommend denial of the architecture and site application. However, if the commission finds merit with the application, the required findings and draft conditions are provided in the staff report for your consideration. This completes staff's report. We're here if you have any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Yes, Commissioner Birch.
I'm sorry, could you tell me again how many square feet over the allowable FAR there?
They would be 1,638 square feet.
Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Erickson.
So just to be sure that I did the math correctly, so if this were approved, we would reduce the housing stock in town by 3 units, but we would also add a unit to the affordable housing count if it was approved as proposed. Is that correct? Because the secondary unit generally counts as an affordable housing unit. Is that right?
Correct. That's how staff understands it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Talasfor.
Can you clarify for me again, the secondary unit, that's already there, or that will be renovated to be there?
They're converting one of the existing units on the floor right above the attached garage to be the second unit.
To stay as the second unit? Because it already is a unit now?
It is 1 unit within the 5.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner O'Donnell.
As I understand the rationale of the staff to recommend denial is because of the exceeding the FAR, right? Is that right?
That, as well as the largest house, as well as the general plan direction to maintain the existing housing stock.
But if we do nothing, it will, if we applied the same law to it, which we wouldn't, it would still exceed the FAR, and it would still have multiple units in an area which would not, it's a non-conforming use, right?
It's a non-conforming use, and it's not conforming to parking. The existing use as a multifamily building is not subject to FAR, so it's not currently exceeding the FAR. While the massing wouldn't really change with the proposed application, the FAR only comes into play because it's being converted.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sayak.
Are the 5 units currently part of our inventory for affordable housing?
No, they are market rate units.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Badami?
We have a 10% slope reduction rule for FAR, and when I look at sheet C1, it measures the slope at 9.9%. So do we use the average that's less? Do we use the 9.9? And does staff double-check these numbers? Because I see twice in the material that it's described as a very steep street.
The street itself is quite steep. The lot, when you average the slope over the whole lot, which is how we take the average of the lot slope for the lot itself. When they brought in a civil engineer, he determined that he provided that lot, the average lot slope.
So the civil engineer is his civil engineer, but we don't double-check it.
Correct. He's a licensed professional providing that information.
Thank you.
All right, we will now open the public portion of the public hearing, and I will call, and I believe, Mr. Crawford, are you, yes, please step forward.
Hello, and my name's Ken Crawford. My address is 16830 Sheldon Road, Los Gatos, and I'm one of the owners of 16 Clifton Avenue. This is my daughter, Lauren, and our architect, Jay, in the back.
All right, and so if they speak at all with you, sir, they just need to fill out a card, okay? And you
They've
can
all
submit it
filled out
afterwards. Okay, they've all filled out cards?
Correct.
Okay, so all 3 of you are together more or less?
Correct.
All right. You have 5 minutes to address us.
Perfect. I'll be very short. I'm an owner of the Clifton property. I've lived in Los Gatos since 1961. Grew up in this town.
Could I ask you, I'm sorry to interrupt. Yes, there you go.
Right. I grew up in this town, attended Dave's Avenue, Fisher, Los Gatos High School. My children grew up in the town, attended the same schools, even had some of the same teachers. I've started multiple companies. All have been based in Los Gatos. My family purchased the property in 1969. Our understanding of the history of the property, it was built as a single-family home around 1908. In the 20s, 30s, and 40s, it was enlarged to its current size. In the 50s, the first rental unit appeared, and when we bought it in 1969, it was five units of a converted house. Our family has deep ties to the property. My wife and I lived here. Our 2 children were born here, and my son lived here after college. Jay will describe the project and the benefits to the town, but my reason for asking that the project be approved are different. Like 2 prior generations, I want my children to raise their families in Los Gatos. We have deep ties to the community and understand what it does to help raise a healthy family. We want Lauren and Chad's children to be the 4th generation to live and grow up in Los Gatos. Thank you.
My name is Jay Plett, architect with Gary Schlow. We have the desk item that was submitted to you, and we have one item titled the project benefits. And, just going through that, the idea that we have here is we would want to return this house to what it was originally, which is a single-family house in a historic district, very important to the town. The Historic Preservation Committee has reviewed the project and approved it. We believe that the restored project will be a benefit and proud contributor to the neighborhood. The areas that are relocated as the remodel is done are to the rear of the house as opposed to the front, although the roof is being raised just a little bit, but it's not really perceptible if you saw the story poles out there, the impact that that's going to have. Again, the second dwelling unit is being retained as a rental unit. That's also consistent with the neighborhood. There's 18 existing single-family homes with a permitted secondary unit on Broadway alone. On the site plan that you have, I've also indicated there in red the numbers indicate the numbers of the house that surround this in the neighborhood. There's a county record that was part of your handout. And that was based on old records, and you can see all the way to the right where I have the actual stories of the neighboring structures that this house is as it is very compatible with what's out there. Also, there's 10 photos for your review of the surrounding houses. Parking is definitely an issue, and the congestion with, I believe staff said there's 13 parking places for a 5-unit unit are required, and only 5 are provided. So the overflow parking goes onto the street, and if you again look at the site plan in red, one side of Clifton is no parking due to it's a fire lane. So then parking spills down all the way down onto Broadway from this unit. Again, we believe, there's no way to alleviate that. The building is there. Although if the project is approved, then the parking will become in conformance and will be parked on site and completely off site. I guess that's it for me as well, unless you have any questions now or if Warren is going to speak. Okay.
Hi. I just wanted to say, as my dad mentioned, I grew up in this town, went to the same schools he did, and I'm really looking forward to raising my family with my husband in this town that's, given so much to me and my family. Right now we have a 16-month-old daughter, and we're planning on expanding that family, and raising them in a house that has such a deep history with my family would really be incredible.
And could you identify yourself, just so we have it for the record?
Lauren Cutting.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant, the owner, or the architect? Yes, Commissioner Tallis, 4. And let's just, who are you going to direct it toward?
Oh,
Since there were
the
3
architect. Mr. Pardon?
Mr. Platt.
Platt. Is that right?
Yes,
Mr. Platt,
yeah.
thank you. Yeah, I have 2 questions, and one was that I wanted to ask, are you adding to the existing structure, or is that the square footage of the existing structure? I mean, I know you're going to take off, you have a very unusual room somewhere, and you are going to take that off, but, so I just wanted to know if you're adding to the structure.
Maybe the best way to describe it is that we're relocating areas to other portions of the structure.
Okay.
Okay. So the end result is the house is going to have less square footage than it does now.
Okay. Thank you. So then my second question I wanted to follow up with, and that's in Exhibit 5, and it was from the HPC meeting that you attended, and they approved your changes. But one thing that I checked, and one thing that was said here was the French doors would be preferred over proposed slider. And I noticed on, where are we here? On A4 in the plans.
Mm-hmm.
That the French-style sliding door is still in place, is that correct?
Yeah, I wasn't at that initial meeting. In the past, if I would have been there, we have always argued that a sliding glass door with the proper sizing of the stiles and the rails will look just like a French door, and it operates more efficiently. So as I got into the project, I took the liberty of inserting that because it would look just like a bank of true French doors, but if true French doors are required, we can do that, swinging doors.
Okay, thank you. I would appreciate that. And I say that because it was a preference, as it says in our report from HPC. Plus, there's an example already in the family room of, looks like doors that swing open.
That's right, yeah, because
And
those doors couldn't be a slider because then only half of it would
Right.
open.
So it seems like there would be room enough to accomplish that here if that
Yeah.
would be agreeable to you and the applicant.
Yeah, we could do swinging doors there.
Okay. You could make them go in instead of out if you need more room on the deck, or however you're going to do that.
Yeah, we prefer them to swing in. Swing out, difficult to screen.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
As the house presently exists, you have some space with a 7-foot-high ceiling, is that right?
I'm sorry, space with what?
A 7-foot-high ceiling that is 7 feet from the floor.
There's, many spaces that are above 7. I mean, as it exists now?
Right.
Yeah, okay. If you look at sheet, as-built demo 1, or AB.
What's the exhibit again?
ABD1.
Okay.
Okay, the area you see there that's being abandoned, that's crosshatched, that area there, those ceiling heights are 6'8", 6'10" at the most. So they don't meet the code. So those areas that area is being eliminated. The other portion of that unit, Unit 3, those ceilings are, I'm not sure exactly what they are, but they are over 7. They're somewhere between 7 and 8, if not 8. And then, if you're wondering about the rest of the house as well.
No, I was just curious. The space that does not comply with code is going to be abandoned.
That's right. That'll be returned to crawl space.
Right. And however, that space will be exchanged essentially for new and additional space.
Right, yeah. The space we're eliminating is greater than the space that we're adding back by 20, 30 square feet, something
And you're
like that.
lifting the roof
Yes.
to get better, I guess, height in the rooms.
Yeah, if you look at the building section, sheet A7, it shows substandard ceilings on the mid-level, and those are going to be brought up to match the original ceiling height of 9 feet of the original house, because they're on the same level, which severely impacts the room above it, so then we'll modestly raise that a little bit. The plate height on the room above is only going to be 7 feet.
The space that is 6'8" or thereabouts, however, is occupied, is that right? Or generally occupied?
Right now it is, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Birch.
Just to clarify a couple of things. In going through, I completely understand the revisions and everything that you're making. I just want to be sure and clarify that from the street, looking at it, there's no additional massing being added to the face of the structure. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, there'd be a little bit if you look at the elevation on the wall. Upper right-hand corner, you can see the as-built elevation of the front on the bottom of that sheet.
Right.
And then the raised roof, I think it was 2'9". It shows, it depicts it there, what the difference would be. So we're basically just taking that existing gable element and just pushing it straight up.
Right, so it's not going to surpass the existing ridgeline, which is at, what, 29'2"? You're going to bring that ridgeline up to match that height, correct?
No, it will be above the existing, if you look at the elevation, again, the elevation will be above the existing, you mean the existing ridge? Okay, it's going to be above the existing remaining ridge, but it's still at the 29'2" height.
Okay, that's what I was
Whatever the
trying to
height was
clarify.
designated, yeah.
I wasn't sure on A7, it wasn't
Okay.
completely clear, but,
I'm
okay.
sorry. Yeah, the height is raised as 2'2".
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I have no other cards also on this item, so if the applicant, the architect, or the future homeowner would like 3 more minutes to add anything that might have occurred to you while we were here, I'm happy to give it to you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
You're all set? All right. Then I'm going to close the public portion of the public hearing and ask any commissioners, if you have questions of staff, you want to comment on the application, or want to introduce a motion for consideration by the commission. Commissioner Talasfor.
I think my reaction to this is I was really overwhelmed by what I saw, and I have to really congratulate the owners for wanting to convert this structure back into a historic home. I mean, you're taking on quite a project. But what I was struck with is that the design that you have is actually not adding any square footage to what's already there. It's already, that structure has existed, and it's historic. So it gives us, it's a very unique case that we're looking at tonight, I think, because it is what it is, and the FAR is, because it's already over, it's sort of a moot point. I think it's that maybe the neighborhood grew around it. I'm not sure, but I don't have a problem with seeing that this would exceed the FAR because it is, in fact, they're taking away some square footage. So to me, and they're keeping one of the rentals. So for me, I really don't have a problem with this at all. I would tend to approve this.
Thank you, Commissioner Talasfor. Commissioner Bondami?
I don't have a problem with it either. In fact, I'm just pleased that the intensity is actually reduced despite the FAR being in excess. It was there before the FAR.
Commissioner Birch?
I also am pleased to see that you've taken on this project and you're going to restore this home. And while I think we've all seen it's exceeding the FAR, it already was, so clearly we're not changing any massing or scale or any neighborhood compatibility. So unless anyone has any other comments, I'll go ahead and venture a motion. Okay. All right, I move to approve application, architecture and site application S-13-032, 16 Clifton Avenue, requesting to convert an existing 5-unit pre-1941 multifamily residence into a single-family residence with an attached second dwelling unit. And I can do that based on the following findings: that the proposed project is categorically exempt pursuant to Section 15301 of the California Environmental Quality Act, as adopted by the town, shown in Exhibit 2. That the proposed FAR exception is compatible with the immediate neighborhood, that the housing project and removal of the existing housing units is consistent with the town housing element, that the proposed project meets or exceeds the objectives and requirements of the residential design guidelines shown in Exhibit 2, and make the required considerations as required by Section 29.20.150 of the Town Code for granting approval of an architecture and site application shown in Exhibit 2, and make the required considerations as required by Section 29.80.290 of the Town Code for projects in historic districts shown in Exhibit 2, and approve the architecture and site application S-13-038 with conditions contained in Exhibit 3.
Commissioner Birch, we'll let you catch your breath and ask if there is a second. Yes, Commissioner Bondami.
I'll second the motion.
Right, is there any discussion? Commissioner Talasfor.
Right, I will definitely, as I stated before, vote in favor of this, but could we please add that the preference of the Historic Preservation Committee for the French doors with the agreement of the architect and owners be included in the condition?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
So what I understand, Commissioner Talasfor, is that you're asking the maker of the motion and the second if they accept that additional condition.
Yes.
All right. Commissioner Erickson.
So I have a couple of questions for the maker of the motion. It would be, while I'm sympathetic to the project, we have to follow the guidelines of the town. So if I look at the FARs in the neighborhood, the FAR for this project will be significantly higher than the norm in the neighborhood and significantly higher than the next highest FAR. So it would be difficult for me to support a motion that is based on a finding that the FAR is compatible with the neighborhood, is consistent with the neighborhood. So that's one question. There was nothing in the motion that addressed the issue that we're reducing this housing stock in the town, which is not consistent with the general plan of the town. And then I would also ask the maker of the motion and Commissioner O'Donnell, who are members of the Historic Preservation Committee, I'm not sure what the reason for the preference of the Historic Preservation Committee is, because we're not talking about an architectural feature, we're talking about the function of it, and we have public testimony that it will look the same. So it's not clear to me that the province of the Historic Preservation Committee delves into the functioning of a door as opposed to the architectural design, so I'm not sure what the rationale was.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Let me make comments on those three very good points. I think as far as the consistency with the FAR is concerned, it would be true if the house were not already built. The FAR is already, if it were a single-family home, it is in excess of the permitted FAR. So if we were to say, well, if you're going to change it to a less intense use, you're going to improve the parking in the neighborhood, but you can't do that because now you're under a different rule. I think it would turn the reason for the FAR restriction on its head. And therefore, I think there is a factual difference here. You might disagree with that, but that's the way I justify it. As far as the housing stock is concerned, these are units which are not taken into consideration, as I understand it, in our moderate cost housing. It is an historical accident that these are what they are. The damage I think they do to the neighborhood would, in my judgment, outweigh the removal of 4 units. So now we would have 1 additional unit which would comply. So it is correct that you're losing 4 units, but it is my understanding that if there are overriding considerations, and I find personally, I believe that's the case, one can do that. And finally, since I do sit on the Historical Review Committee, the French doors were simply, and I'm not as astute as some of my fellow members of that committee, the French doors were requested simply because they're consistent with the other doors on that floor and for their look. But as to whether or not, well, as you know, there's an advice to this Planning Commission. It is not a compulsion to this Planning Commission. So I personally wouldn't care whether they were French doors or to the contrary. But I also, we were fortunate to have some very smart and very sensitive people on that committee, and I usually I'm perfectly willing to follow their judgment. And it is a good judgment. It is not a compelling thing, but it's a good judgment.
Any further discussion? Yes, Commissioner Sayak.
May I ask a question of staff before I make comments?
Definitely.
It was mentioned that the secondary unit would be part of the affordable housing inventory. How can is that enforced?
It's staff's understanding that the way the state views affordable housing, they view all secondary units as affordable housing units. There's no restriction that is placed on them to require them to rent at a certain rate, but the state considers them all as affordable housing units for the town to consider, as well as any other jurisdiction.
Okay, so by its sheer construction, we can add one more to our list of meeting
Correct.
the state
We get to count it
requirements.
towards our numbers for next year.
Okay, and then if I can, go ahead and share my comments. So, I have to admit, initially I was concerned about reducing the housing stock and looking at it completely as a land use issue and not the architectural style, because I agree, the return to its original features and the architectural enhancements, I think, was well crafted and well designed. But as a town, we have a responsibility to ensure that we provide housing types at all economic opportunities. And I was really grappling with this, that we're bringing it down from 5 housing units to basically 1 with a secondary unit. So we talked about the overriding considerations, and I think what would make me feel comfortable with approving this is stating that for the record, that yes, we are reducing the housing stock, but really we are adding 1 more to our affordable housing unit, which is very important to this town. And that the historical nature of it, reducing the parking intensity in a very, very intense area after doing the site visit, realizing how that parking situation really is a detriment to the neighborhood. And as Commissioner O'Donnell said, just returning it to its historic glory in a historic district is something that I think is also a consideration that should be stated in the record for why this is being approved.
Commissioner Erickson.
With the explanations and being part of the record that Commissioner O'Donnell and Commissioner Sayak have now entered, I can now support the motion, since we have a rationale that can support the motion in front of us.
Thank you. And then I'd also like to make my comments, which are that I find it very persuasive what the applicant is going to be doing to the property. I do think I was highly impressed, I would say, by the neighbors who wrote the letters of support, because we always do take neighborhood compatibility into account, so I appreciated hearing from those neighbors. And I think that it's really going to enhance that part of the neighborhood to have the home restored. So for that reason, I too will be supporting the motion. Any further comments? All right, let's take a vote then. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And any opposed? Thank you. It passes unanimously. Are there appeal rights, Mr. Paulson?
There are appeal rights. Anyone that's not satisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission can appeal that decision to the Town Council. Forms are available in the Town Clerk's office. The appeal must be filed within 10 days, and there is a fee for filing the appeal.
Thank you. I'd like to move on to agenda item number 3, and I don't have any cards for that agenda item. Is there anyone here that is going to speak on agenda item number 3? All right, sir, if you can fill out your cards and present them to the, we're not quite ready for you at the podium yet, but I just wanted to make sure we have someone here. Okay, the next item on our agenda is a public hearing to consider architecture and site application S13005, requesting approval to demolish an existing single-family residence and to construct a new family residence at 15588 Benedict Lane. May I have a show of hands from commissioners who have visited the property? And are there any disclosures by any commissioner? Thank you. Ms. Mosley, I understand you're going to give us the staff report.
Yes, I am. The 9,659 square foot property is located towards the southern end of Benedict Avenue and currently contains a 1,456 square foot residence with a 320 square foot detached garage. The applicant is proposing to construct a 2,992 square foot single-story residence with a 430 square foot attached garage. The proposed residence would have an FAR of 0.31 and a maximum height of 21 feet. While the proposed design and layout of the residence would be similar to those in the surrounding neighborhood, the residence would have the largest FAR of any properties in the immediate vicinity, but not the largest square footage. For this reason, the application was forwarded to the Planning Commission for consideration. While the plans conform to all town standards and guidelines, the applicant is requesting to retain the proposed metal roof, which the consulting architect requested be changed to composition shingles based on the design and the neighborhood compatibility. The applicant has provided specific justification for this, which can be found in Exhibit 8 of your staff report. If the Planning Commission determines that a metal roof is acceptable, then condition number 10 of Exhibit 3 should be removed as part of any potential motion to approve the application. While the proposed design will have the largest FAR in the immediate neighborhood, the proposed residence will have a similar massing from the street as those in the immediate neighborhood, and the design is consistent with the town's residential design guidelines. As a result, staff recommends the Commission approve the application subject to the attached conditions. We are here if you have any comments or questions.
Thank you, Ms. Mosley. Are there any questions of staff? Yes, Commissioner Bondami.
Larry Cannon, the town consulting architect, said that in past similar situations, metal roofing has been determined to not be consistent with residential design guidelines. Can you elaborate on those situations? What neighborhoods are you aware?
Let me look at his report a little bit and see if I can come to context for you for that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Birch.
I just want to confirm that the ways the story poles are configured now, is that the new proposed height and layout?
Yes, they are.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
As far as the metal roof is concerned, apparently there are a number of different looks to metal roofs. I did not see a description, and perhaps I just missed it, of the particular type or appearance of metal roof that's being suggested here. Did we have a sample or a photograph? Or I know there were photographs of other roofs, but I wasn't sure which particular look it would have.
The applicant would be best to speak to that when he comes up.
Commissioner Bondami.
It's on the last page of the report at the top.
I'm not entirely sure what he's referring to. He has had some concerns in the past on metal roofings. They are becoming more predominant as far as in applications in styles that they haven't always been traditionally seen in. It is a more common roofing material that people are trying to use more readily today, and it's been something that he, I think, has struggled with as far as finding it compatible based on his architectural background.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner O'Donnell.
I'm confused. Compatibility, is my understanding, means it's compatible with the neighborhood, not with what's coming down the pike. So I have not seen a metal roof come before us, ever.
Some of that has come as far as direction to staff in previous designs that may have been removed in designs that prior to you seeing the final design.
Okay, so as far as being compatible, are you aware of any roof that this would be compatible to that now exists in town in a single-family residence?
Well, as far as staff understands, his comment towards compatibility had to do with the fact that there are no metal roofs in that neighborhood, as well as that it's not traditionally seen on this architectural style.
And I would just add that there are houses in town, single-family homes, that have metal seam roof.
And just one more quick thing to add to that is that they could put composition shingles on now and 5 years down the road come in and apply for a re-roofing permit that they'd be able to make that change potentially.
And that would require no, is that a given as a right, or is that discretionary?
A re-roofing permit is not a discretionary permit. It's not something that planning even actually has a review of.
Thank you.
All right, we are now going to open the public portion of the public hearing, and I'd like to give the applicant an opportunity to address the commission for up to 5 minutes. You can hand this right over here, sir. State your name and address for the record, please.
Lance Tate. I currently reside at 145 Bella Vista Avenue in Los Gatos. I'll be brief so you can get to the main event this evening. I'm a longtime resident of the area. I grew up in Saratoga, but for the vast majority of my adult life, I've been living in Los Gatos. My business is located in Los Gatos. We're at 22 South Santa Cruz Avenue, right next door to Willow Street. I'm building this house for my family. My fiance and my stepson-to-be, we're getting married in May, so this is for us. The plan went through several iterations before it came to you. We worked with staff and actually consulted with the neighbors in the area, and we believe we came up with a plan that was sensitive to the neighborhood as well as what staff wanted and what the feeling was that the neighborhood wanted. It's a single-story home. We call it a contemporary farmhouse, and this, with all due respect to Mr. Cannon, the standing seam metal roof actually is, it's seen on farmhouses. It's pretty common. If you go back architecturally, historically, it's not that odd to see that on a farmhouse style. What else? I believe we had 17 letters of support from neighbors, so the neighbors seem fairly happy with what we've proposed. Didn't try to get too creative, although it's occupational hazard. I'm a real estate developer. So that's really all I have for you.
Thank you. Stay right there.
Sure.
All right. Any questions for the applicant? Yes, Commissioner Talasfor.
Hi. Thank you, Mr. Tate. In your research for metal roofing, can you tell us, well, you say here it's a personal taste preference for you, and also for, I think, sustainability. So in your research, did you come across any other roof materials that would also be considered sustainable and that were metal?
Not that we're metal, no. And honestly, I wasn't looking that far. It's, like I said, historically, the standing seam metal roof goes with that style house. Yeah, when I conceptually came up with the idea, that's what I wanted to do. I just know I can tell you it's significantly more sustainable than asphalt comp shingle.
Well, you probably have there are probably people on both sides of that idea, but, okay, thank you for now.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Sayak?
I'll try a different question.
Sure.
When you were doing your research to study your design based on our residential design guidelines, did you find any homes, I understand not in your immediate neighborhood, but in town that have metal roofs? I know one comes to mind, nowhere near you, but in your own research, were you able to find anything?
I believe there's one on Topping. I think there's one on Blossom Hill. Those are the only ones that come to mind. If I'm not mistaken, there's one in downtown as well, but I'm not positive of that.
Commissioner Bandami?
So that we can envision the look of the metal roof, can you give us an idea of the size of the panels? Because I did a little research, and they can range in size from 12 inches to 20 inches. So are they on the wider?
12 inches.
12 inches. Okay. And with that in mind, there's also seam fasteners, and they can range in size from 1/2 inch to 1.5 inch. So can you give me an idea how raised they're going to be? 1 inch?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Birch?
Can you give us a little bit of information as far as what kind of material you're using on the exterior of the house? It's not clear in these drawings.
Cement board, board and batten. It's called cement board, board and batten. It's board and batten. It's how would you
Clarify for me,
describe
that has the seams, correct?
it? It's Chris can describe this better than I can.
Thank you.
Chris Spalding, architect. Yeah, the siding it looked like a classic board and batten siding. He just means it's not true wood, it's a composite material, so it's long lasting.
And again, that has the seams that go down the side?
It has battens,
Right.
so it's a flat boards and then battens that stick out every 12 inches.
So those will be at 12 inches also?
Right, and the color scheme is a white house with and a pewter roof.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
Mr. Spalding, we're going to ask you more questions, so just make sure you fill out a card
yeah, I have
before
a card,
you leave.
I'll hand it in.
All right. Commissioner O'Donnell?
I'm glad to see you there, Mr. Spalding, because I've got some specific questions. There are no samples brought to show us. I've looked at the photographs, and as near as I can tell, metal roofs can have different looks, i.e., just sort of a color look. Also, as you noted, the width and the length of the panels. Your drawings would indicate fairly long panels. It looks more than 12 inches, but that's neither here nor there. I think you said it was 20 or 12?
We go with the 12 because the wider the panel, the more what we call oil cans, which doesn't look nice.
What I'm concerned with is the compatibility, in my view, is compatibility with the neighborhood. And metal can be fine if it can be compatible with the neighborhood. So I'm not against metal. But I don't know what this metal looks like, and the samples that appear in the photographs, when somebody says barns or farmhouses have metal roofs, that doesn't impress me because, if you go to the Ozarks, you're going to find a metal roof, but I don't know what that's got to do with Los Gatos. So I'm looking at these pictures. Can you give me an idea what these panels would look like?
I don't have those pictures.
I don't have those pictures. Can I borrow someone's?
Sure.
Yeah.
This guy.
These are the photographs.
Yeah, I would say the most comparable one is the bottom right corner where it says the major element of this original 1940s cottage with the dogs standing in the lawn out front. That's a pewter color roof with a standing seam. And so the type of roof we want to use here is not the painted type. So the pewter roof is a coating that's I forget the term for it, but it's manufactured into the metal. So there you go. So it doesn't wear off. Like if it's a painted roof, then you can get the color coming off. So it's a permanent color, and it's and that zinc oxide also keeps it from rusting.
And this particular roof, I take it, has, you've discussed your design with the neighbors,
Yes.
and including the roof,
Yes.
Oh,
they-
yeah.
They got a full plan set.
and nobody's objected to it?
Not that
That I'm
we,
aware of.
not that we know of, no.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just ask you a question, because I think this can actually help us. Can you take us on the journey that you took to decide on this metal roofing versus more traditional roofing that we have here in Los Gatos?
Want me to field that for you?
Yeah, sure.
And you can do it in a minute or two.
Well, when I first was meeting with them about what they wanted in their house, all the pictures that they had that he and his fiancée liked the best was this white houses with the big windows, the board and batten siding, and the metal roof. So it was just, it was the whole package of the style that they liked. So.
And Mr. Spalding, did you have any alternatives in your own mind? Which is a very creative mind, so that's why I'm asking the question.
Well, I mean, you could put any roof on there, but then it would change the character of the house, the style.
All right, that's what I wanted to hear, that if you could put a different roof on, but it would change the character of the
Right.
house. All right, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Talasfor.
Thank you, Mr. Spalding. So on that journey that you're taking us on to envision this house in the neighborhood, our residential design guidelines strongly ask us to adhere that when we demolish a home, that we put back something similar in character, style, materials. So seeing this, I would like you to help me understand how this house will be compatible with what's there presently.
Well, I mean, if you just take it as to be compatible, it would have to have the same roofing as the adjacent houses, then it would have to have comp shingle. But I don't know that, I mean, in other parts of town, we have houses that all have comp shingle, and we go with a tile roof, and that doesn't seem to be an issue. I think the consulting architect had an issue with it just because he seems to have a general issue with metal roofing.
Right. And how about the siding on the house? It sounds different to me, and I have nothing in front of me to see it, so I don't know how to envision it.
Well, not familiar with board and batten?
Well, I am, but, I don't know which one you're choosing.
Well, it just looks like flat boards with a batten every 12 inches. It's pretty...
What's the texture?
It's all smooth, yeah, and painted.
So does it look more like wood or more like...
It looks like painted
cement?
wood.
Yeah. Okay.
I think what she's getting at is the fact that it isn't wood. Board and batten traditionally was wood.
Yeah.
And that's fine. We have recently approved a couple of housing developments, existing developments near Bachman, as I recall. And in those cases, they had, as I recall, originally had shingles, and they were replacing them with a composite, which had much greater durability. But it looked exactly like what was being replaced. So I think the question here is simply, is this going to look like it would be wood, even though it's not?
It looks exactly like wood.
Right. So that's what I think we were getting at. And the other thing I guess I'm curious about, you've said again that it would change the character of the building. I'm a little troubled by that. You're saying you're building a building that can only have one kind of roof? That's kind of an interesting building.
Well, it's just if, like, for instance, you do a Santa Barbara style house, you can't put comp shingles on it. It has to have tile. So if you put comp shingles on this house, it would be the same house, but stylistically it's different. It's a different.
So
roofing.
you've said the style of this home is what?
We call it contemporary farmhouse.
And so you don't think a farmhouse can have a asphaltic shingle roof that lasts for 40 years?
It could, but then it wouldn't really be a contemporary farmhouse. If you look up on the internet contemporary farmhouse, you'll get this this look.
And there are no other contemporary farmhouses in the neighborhood, is that right?
No, there aren't. There's something similar up on Phillips, but it's a little more ostentatious. We'd call it postmodern, but
it's also not close.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Talasfor?
Follow-up to the roof. I asked Mr. Tate if he was, when he did his research on the metal roofs, if he had seen any other type of metal roofs that were out there as far as products were concerned that were not standing seam metal. And I'm going to ask you the same question, being the architect.
Yeah, there's many other types.
And aren't some in more looking like shingles?
Oh, yeah, there's metal shingles. The preformed metal, kind of a cheap roof, generally.
Well, I don't know. I did do some research myself, and they look pretty good to me.
And then there's
several kinds. Well, there's some made out of aluminum, some made out of steel, but some are painted.
Yeah, by and large, those are like a re-roofing product, not a real high quality roofing product. And then there's sheet roofing that's cheaper than standing seam that you'd see on your typical metal warehouse type building. We wouldn't use. That's again a cheap roofing product.
Okay.
The top of the
Thank
line
you.
for metal roofing is a standing seam.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, I guess we're going to close this part of the presentation. And is there anything, Mr. Tate, since there are no other cards, is there anything more you've thought to add because you have an extra 3 minutes or not? It's up to you. If you've thought of anything additional you'd like to add.
I think we're good. Thank you, though.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to close the public portion of the public hearing, and I'm wondering about the commissioners and any comments. Mr. O'Donnell.
It's fairly obvious that since our consulting architect for the town is troubled by this shingle, by this roof, some of us have been troubled. On the other hand, since neighbors are not objecting to it, and since were we to approve this, and we were clear what we were approving, because there are a number of choices, and I think the applicant has told us what they're talking about, high quality stuff. I would not want to say no to a metal roof simply because it was a metal roof. I would also not want to say no if the neighbors don't object to it. Personally, if I were a neighbor, I might be troubled by having a metal roof, but that might just be my own problem. So I guess I'm just throwing this out because I think it's perhaps our only issue. I think it might be a good time to try. I have not seen one of these come before me, so notwithstanding there may be a couple in town, I've not seen one, so it's new to me, which is not a reason we shouldn't do it. And I guess I'm thinking it might be a good place to try it. The neighbors are okay with it. They're talking about high quality stuff, so I'd like to throw that out and see what my fellow commissioners think.
Commissioner Bondami?
I don't object to the metal roof either. I think it's an upgrade. I think we should try it. I think it's a newer trend. It's good for the neighborhood, and it does fit into a contemporary look that fits in with a contemporary farmhouse look. They last a longer time. They're considered a cool roof by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. It's energy saving. And again, I believe it's more costly to put this type of roof on, so I'm going to consider it an upgrade to the neighborhood. The neighbors are in support, and I think it adds a little diversity with some style to the neighborhood and not look so cookie cutter. And I've seen paint colors look more offensive.
Commissioner Sayak?
I too have no problem with it. I do know there are a couple in town, nothing in the immediate. You know, when I'm looking at the residential design guidelines, I'm more concerned about bulk and mass and And those types of issues, maybe I'm in the minority, but a roof and the siding, that's personal style. And if that was from the very beginning something that he wanted from his home and it's not offensive to his neighbors, I see no reason why I should be denying it. So if there's no objections, I'll go ahead and make the motion.
Please.
Okay. I find that the proposed project is categorically exempt pursuant to Section 15303 of CEQA. Do want to make the point that with the metal roof that there are sustainability guidelines that we are now meeting and that it's highly encouraged by the US EPA as well as the Green Building Design Guidelines. I'm going to make the required findings under Section 29.10.09030, the Town Code for demolition of a single-family residence. All those findings are in Exhibit 2. I can also make the required findings in our residential design guidelines. I will note that we have commented on the consulting architect's concern over the roof, and based on the discussion, that there is a comfort level there. And I can make the required considerations as required by Section 29.20.150 of the Town Code. Those specifics are in Exhibit 2 as well. And for those reasons, and also I would like to reword condition number 10 of Exhibit 3, that the metal roof is now acceptable. And for all of the above reasons, I move to approve architecture and site application that is situated at 15588 Benedict Lane.
Do I have a second? Commissioner Erickson.
I'll second the motion.
Yes, making some comments. Commissioner Birch.
I'd like to make a quick comment. I'm not going to be able to support the motion, being very familiar with that neighborhood and some of the adjacent neighborhoods. I'm concerned about the overall style of this house and the compatibility. That neighborhood consists of some relatively simple ranch-style homes and smaller bungalow-style homes. I think that perhaps it maybe would have been easier to see some sample materials in that decision-making, but at this point, based on that, I can't support the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Birch. Commissioner Talasfor.
I have a very hard time supporting this motion, and I will not be supporting it. I think it's unusual that we have a proposal in front of us with unusual materials to consider, and we have nothing to actually look at and touch and feel. And often, more than often, we have architects, planners, developers that come before us and bring materials. I have nothing to base this on except black and white here, and that doesn't help me at all. As I see it, the materials that are chosen are going to, when I drove through the neighborhood and actually walked it, the house will be different. And demolitions, I believe, are supposed to be somewhat similar in nature. Doesn't have to be a copycat, but it has to blend. And I don't see that happening here for me. From what I go, when I'm reading my residential design guidelines of the town. And so that is an issue for me. Not that I would not entertain a standing seam roof, but I don't see it in front of me. Not that I wouldn't entertain a metal roof. That could be the way to go for the future, but I can't do it tonight.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
I would just ask the maker of the motion and the seconder if they would incorporate in our conditions that the roof and the board and batten be as described this evening, because it's true. Normally, for architectural site approval, we would expect to see samples of the board and batten and samples of the roof, which we did not see. However, since I just spent some time on those houses, those two houses I talked about near Bachman, and saw the material, I'm assuming it is the same. So I would like to make sure the motion is very clear that the roof is as described, and it's in the record, and the board and batten is as described. Those are both, as described, high-quality products. The board and batten will truly look like wood, and it'll be up to staff to make sure that occurs. And the metal will also be as described. I'm comfortable with that, although I certainly agree with Commissioner Talasfor. Normally, we would have samples. Why we don't tonight, I don't know. But with that if the maker and the seconder would agree to that condition, I could feel comfortable.
Yes, definitely. And staff, I think, before you proceed with these plans, this would be a condition of approval, and you'd make sure that, as we describe the materials tonight, they are the materials that are being used?
Staff will ensure that on the approved building plan set that they are defined.
Okay, then that's fine with me.
Fine.
Yes, I'd like to make my own comment if I could, and that is that I'm going to support the motion. Number one, we've heard from quite a few neighbors through written communication that they're in agreement and they like this house and this style. And secondly, I think we here in Los Gatos actually celebrate a diversity of style. It's what makes our town interesting, and I think this is a good opportunity to walk that talk of interesting style. I think it's going to be fine for that neighborhood, and that in particular the neighbors are in support of it. So I'm going to support the motion. Commissioner Talasfore, you wanted to add something?
I was just wanting to add that the color of the roof is extremely important. And pewter does not, I mean, pewter is many shades, there's many shades of pewter. So I'm wondering if we, as a, either the staff could let us know when those materials are in, or if they have samples of them that we could come down and see them. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, that's a possibility for anyone who's interested in seeing those materials.
Okay, you'll have them at the...
We will request those prior to the issuance of building permit as
Okay.
direction, not in the motion.
Okay, thank you. And somebody would let us know as a commit for the commission. Thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell, you have another comment?
This issue, we were told that the roof would look like that portion of the piece of paper they gave us, which is in the lower right-hand corner of page 2, the caption being the major element of this original 1940s cottage. I'm assuming that the representation is this roof is going to look like that. So I would ask staff, you have it, that's what they've told us, and if they want to change that, then that's a new ballgame. So I'm not too troubled by the color, because the color's right here.
Thank you. So I think we have settled that particular issue. So let's take a vote, and all in favor of this motion? Aye. And opposed? See 2 opposed. Thank you. Mr. Paulson, are there appeal rights?
There are appeal rights. Anyone that's not satisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission can appeal the decision to the Town Council. Forms are available in the Town Clerk's office. There's a fee for filing the appeal, and the appeal must be filed within 10 days.
Thank you. And now what I would like to do is we're going to take perhaps a 5 to 7 minute break. Anyone who has additional cards to submit for item number 4, please bring them up during the break. We will reconvene close to 8:30 and take up the issue of item 4. Thank you. I'm calling the meeting of March 12th, 2014 back to order. The next item on our agenda is a public hearing to accept public comment on the draft environmental impact report for a request to modify an existing CUP to increase school enrollment and modify operations for Hillbrook School located at 300 Marchmont Drive on property which is currently HR1, specifically conditional use permit application U12002 and environmental impact report EIR 13001. As required by the California Environmental Quality Act, this public hearing is being held during the 45-day public notice period of the draft environmental impact report for the proposed CUP modification. The notice of availability for review of the draft EIR was released on February 7th, 2014, with the 45-day review period ending on March 24th, 2014. This public hearing is an opportunity for members of the public to provide verbal comments on the completeness and adequacy of the draft EIR. Written comments will be accepted until the close of the public review period on March 24th, 2014. This public hearing is not intended for consideration of the proposed project or for certification of the draft EIR. The Planning Commission may not act on the merits of the proposed project until the final EIR has been prepared. Following the public hearing this evening and the close of the 45-day public review period on March 24th, staff and the town's environmental consultant will respond to all written comments received by the end of the public review period and to the testimony received this evening. Responses to the comments will be included in the final EIR, which will incorporate any revisions to the draft EIR necessitated by the comments that are received. And so now let me translate all of that. So our purpose this evening is to hear from as many of you as want to speak within a 3-minute period of time. I have quite a few cards here, so I'm going to ask you to line up. I'll call 3 names at a time, and if you can queue up to the left. When you come to the podium, you need to pull the microphone to you, state your name and address, and give us your comments. We will not be asking you any questions. That is not our role this evening, nor are we here to respond to any questions. We are here to receive your comments. I also would ask that you keep in mind a great deal of respect for all of your fellow members in the audience as well. You are addressing the commissioner. We believe that there are differing opinions, and they're all going to be respected this evening. So I just want to make that comment ahead of time. Mr. Paulson, are there any comments?
No, staff has nothing to add.
All right. So then we are going to begin, and let me call these names. And if I make a mistake I'm going to spell any last name that I cannot easily pronounce, and even some I think are easy might be incorrect, so please correct me when you come to the podium. I have a last name of Giudal, Janani. All right, if you're going to go first, right behind her is going to be Sharon Elder. If Miss Elder could please line up behind her, and behind Miss Elder will be Tara Mosley as the next speaker. So if you could, all 3 of you could line up, that would be great. Thank you. Please come to the podium. Pull the microphone toward your face and introduce yourself, state your name and address for the record, and give us your comments.
Okay, I'm Janvi Goodal. I live on Marchmont Drive, and I'm here to speak about the inaccuracies in the draft EIR. So Chapter 4 of the draft EIR says that Marchmont Drive is not a dead-end street. I live on Marchmont Drive. Everybody who drives up the street has to drive down the same street to leave because there is no other access available once you reach the end of Marchmont Drive, which is a dead end right at the Hillbrook School gate. Marked by this X here. So Appendix C in the Appendix A has the Baymetric Speed Survey summary. So for Englewood, which is not a dead-end street, this is the summary. You can see the vast difference in cars going northbound versus southbound because cars have more than one axis. It's not a dead-end street. In contrast, for Marchmont Drive, that is the data on the left-hand side. You can see that the number of cars going eastbound is almost equal to the westbound cars, to the extent that if I cover the column for westbound cars, you can and show you only the eastbound column, you can almost predict the westbound car column, plus minus 1 to 6 cars. So that shows that Marchmont Drive is a dead-end street for all practical purposes. all the cars that enter the Hillbrook School gate on Marchmont Drive have to leave through the same gate, because that is the only access available for parents for drop-off pickup and for the school staff to enter and leave the school, because Marchmont Drive is a dead-end street. So TRA 2.5 in the general plan policy states discourage use of single access roads of extended length and discourage development along such roads. This traffic and circulation policy has unfortunately not been considered in the draft EIR because of the wrong assumption that Marchmont Drive is not a dead-end street when it functionally is a dead-end street for all the residents of Marchmont Drive. If I have an emergency tomorrow or my kids have an emergency, the ambulance has to drive up Marchmont Drive and then drive down the same street to leave to go to the hospital. Now imagine how bad that will be during peak periods of heavy Hillbrook school traffic, especially if they increase the number of students enrolled in them. So either the school should curtail its development in terms of increasing student numbers by not increasing student enrollment, or it should work on making Marchmont Drive a through street, at least for its staff and students, by opening its gate on Ann Arbor Drive. And that will make Marchmont Drive not a dead-end street. So that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to comment on this defective EIR. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Elder, and the previous speaker left something, I think, on the podium.
Oh. Anyone sippy?
It was a sippy cup. I also want to mention when the yellow light goes on, that means that you have 30 seconds left. So, Ms. Elder, please proceed.
Great. My name is Sharon Elder, and I live at 205 Marchmont Drive in Los Gatos. I am here to urge you to not certify the EIR. The report is based on questionable data and faulty reasoning. We have been living on Marchmont Drive, the upper portion, for over 10 years. The EIR has determined that the increase of 99 students will have no impact on the surrounding neighborhood and on the safety of the families living on these streets. I have two children over here, they're 8 and 11, who attend Blossom Hill Elementary School, which, as you know, is a K-5 neighborhood school. I cannot fathom why a public school is required to ease and control the traffic and provide a safer environment for children and the surrounding neighbors, but Hillbrook is not required to offer something similar. At Blossom Hill, there are 2 entrances to the school with 2 parking areas feeding out onto two-way streets. There are carpool lanes on both streets with teachers providing traffic control around the school perimeter. On both Shannon and Kennedy, there are stop signs, traffic signals, and crossing guards, all controlling traffic. There are streetlights, sidewalks, and parking agreements at both the church and also the temple to control traffic around the school and allow the children to be walked onto campus by their parents. The school runs a walk, bike, roll program encouraging parents and children out of their cars. This is how you successfully mitigate traffic and offer a safer environment. You may say, but this is a public school with more students, or it's different as the students all live in the immediate area, but I don't see a difference. If tomorrow Los Gatos determined the elementary schools are too full and another needs to be built, which could be impossible, would they add it to the end of a one-way street at the top of a hill with no street lighting or sidewalks, with a blind curve to navigate? Obviously not. It would be deemed to be too unsafe a location and they would look elsewhere. Hillbrook is our neighbor. They're a great school and offer an amazing program to their students. My children have friends who attend that school. We are not Hillbrook bashing. This is about safety. When I look at what Hillbrook has proposed to mitigate the additional traffic generation by the increased CUP, everything is optional: buses, carpools, etc. A Hillbrook employee acts as a crossing guard, but it's more as a goodwill ambassador, waving down Hillbrook parents to control their speeds so as not to upset the neighbors. I ask myself, what of these optional plans will be in place 1 to 2 years later when a new CUP is in place? Does anyone do anything consistently well without being required or mandated to do it? In 2012, Nelson Nygaard, the traffic consultants who developed the traffic mitigation plan for Hillbrook, took a survey of Hillbrook parents. One question they asked was, what are the barriers to biking, walking to Hillbrook? 25% of Hillbrook parents responded that they were worried about traffic safety. This was in the final traffic plan dated September 14th, 2012. So even 25% of Hillbrook parents have an issue with safety. Please, Planning Department, I urge you to look at the EIR with an eye to what is safe for the surrounding neighborhoods, safe for our children, and support your taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Elder. I'm going to call Ms. Mosley, and then right behind her, Cindy Vindavius. If I mispronounce that, I'm sorry. Please line up. Mr. Todd Harris and Mr. Rutger, and the last name is spelled Vrijen. Thank you, Ms. Mosley. Please identify yourself.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Tara Mosley. My husband and I and our 2 young boys live on Robin Way. I'm an environmental engineer, and I urge you not to certify the EIR. This report is based on questionable data and faulty reasoning. I would like to focus on Table A1 of the draft EIR. I've provided it in the overhead. Table A1 contains a summary of NOP comments and responses. The responses are fundamentally inadequate or lacking in response completely. Here are some examples. On page A5, we asked that the report look at second access, such as Ann Arbor. The report refused to do so. On page A5, we have asked the report to evaluate the impacts of summer programs. The report refused to look at the summer as a separate issue, even though summer traffic is, 1, completely different from school year traffic, 2, Hillbrook is writing a new CUP condition just for summer programs, and 3, Hillbrook has no traffic mitigation program for the summer. On page 5, we have asked that the report look at hazardous conditions on Stony Brook. The report claimed it looked at Stony Brook and found no hazardous conditions. In fact, Stony Brook has numerous hazardous conditions: a blind S-curve, confusing access from Kennedy Road, narrow lanes with cars usually parked on both sides of the already narrow road. The report should have explained why these are not hazardous conditions deserving special attention. We asked that the report also look at other hazardous conditions, including the blind S-curve on Cardinal. The report did not address this at all. On page 5, we asked that the report look at whether the 40-foot-long buses were appropriate for the neighborhood's narrow streets. The report declared them safe without any discussion, even though they are generally not able to make the turn at the S-curve on Marchmont without crossing the yellow line. They also failed to comment on the noise and pollution impact of the buses in the residential neighborhood. On page A7, we asked the report to look into safety related to emergency vehicle access to single-family homes on Upper Marchmont, specifically fire department access on dead-end streets. The report responds to these concerns only in terms of safety at Hillbrook and neglects commenting on the safety of the homes surrounding the school. To conclude, we expected the report to give an honest appraisal of the hazards in the neighborhood and other issues related to traffic and safety. The report did not honestly address the serious safety issues in the neighborhood and, in fact, basically sidestepped all of them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, please identify yourself for the record.
I'll be with it. It's Cindy Vindacious.
Thank you.
And I live on the corner of Marchmont Drive and Rosalie Court, because you probably wouldn't know where Rosalie Court is. I'm here because I read the entire EIR. I'm here because I wanted to express how dumbfounded I was as to some of the inadequacy of the report that Ms. Mosley just spoke of. In particular, in regards to its assessment on opening the Ann Arbor access to Hillbrook traffic, the response noted in the report was that this option is not politically feasible. The report states, and I'll quote, "Based on the history of strong opposition by Ann Arbor Way residents, an alternative to allow regular school access at the Ann Arbor Way gate was determined to be politically infeasible. The Ann Arbor secondary access alternative was considered but rejected, and there was no further evaluation of this alternative. This statement is completely irrelevant in regards to an environmental impact analysis. The gate was closed in 2001 because those neighbors had a strong lobby in opposition to the proposed Hillbrook building expansion. In fact, in 2001, the traffic engineers recommended opening the second access. That traffic study said, if the Ann Arbor gate were open to traffic, the traffic patterns on Marchmont Drive and other nearby streets, including Englewood Avenue, could be reduced to almost normal traffic patterns. The Ann Arbor access is in fact environmentally superior to the Marchmont access. To reach Hillbrook using Ann Arbor, you pass 13 homes. Using the Marchmont side, you pass between 38 and 85 homes. In addition, Ann Arbor has sidewalks, so walking using this access would be much, much safer. A valid environmental impact report could not fail to report that using the Ann Arbor side for at least some Hillbrook traffic would result in far less disturbance, noise, and pollution for the neighborhood overall. A valid EIR would also have to recognize that Hillbrook traffic on the Marchmont side of campus competes with traffic heading towards the 3 public schools, creating a hazardous situation, especially in the morning. This heavy traffic does not exist in the Ann Arbor area. The EIR should not be certified until it includes an impartial and complete evaluation of using Ann Arbor as a second school access. This analysis should then be factored into the scenarios that the report proposes, and these scenarios will be very different when the obvious solution to the traffic pattern is incorporated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Harris? Please state your name for the record.
Good evening. My name is Todd Harris. I live on Cardinal Lane. I'd like to focus on 2 points. First, the fact that participation in Hillbrook's voluntary traffic mitigation plan has already decreased. And secondly, since participation has already dropped and will likely continue to decline, we cannot presume that Hillbrook's pilot TDM will reduce traffic over the long term. Why does the draft EIR assume that implementation of the traffic mitigation measures will improve and that full implementation of the plan will be sustained over time? Parents' participation in the plan is completely optional. Many parents who take part only do so occasionally rather than on a daily basis. What is to prevent parents from falling back into previous, more convenient routines? A September 2012 memorandum from traffic consultants Nelson and Nygaard described Hillbrook's final traffic plan. Excuse me. Since then, not one word of the plan has changed. The plan was put into effect in September 2012. Then in December 2012, Nelson and Nygaard did a traffic analysis using 3 months of traffic counts at the Hillbrook gate. Nelson and Nygaard used only peak period exit counts, even though full day exit counts were available, and the goal of the plan was to reduce overall traffic in the entire community. Exit counts for the 3 months averaged 85 cars for the morning peak period and 109 cars for the afternoon peak period. But subsequent official exit counts taken on March 2013 showed an increase of 107 cars in the morning peak period and 125 cars in the afternoon peak period. In other words, the peak period counts increased over 19% after 3 months. Then, in November 2013, the official counts were 108 cars and 123 cars, showing that peak period exit counts did not decrease from March through November 2013. Given these numbers, it's clear that parents were more diligent in the first few months of the plan, but quickly fell back to their old patterns. This report recommends an environmentally superior alternative that it calls a transportation demand management alternative. This alternative is entirely based on the presumption that the traffic plan will ensure continued reductions already achieved from the pilot TDM, which I mentioned earlier. This report should not be accepted until it provides alternatives based on facts rather than presumptions.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Rutger Frigen, I know you'll correct me on that, and right behind him is going to be Mr. Dotson, Patty Elliott, and then Mark Jameson, if those 3 speakers can also line up. Thank you, and please give me your name and your address.
Thank you very much. Rutger Vrijen, resident at Marchmont 268. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to raise the serious concern that the EIR fails to answer the key question as to what amount of total daily traffic is actually appropriate for a residential dead-end street like Upper Marchmont. Specific questions regarding acceptable trip generation rates of average daily traffic were asked during the NOP period. These questions were not answered. As a result, I believe that the report has insufficiently evaluated the impact of the traffic load on the quality of life and safety of residents of Upper Marchmont Drive. The EIR fails to use widely accepted methods to assess acceptable levels for average daily traffic, such as the method prescribed by the Institute of Transportation Engineers and published in ITE's Trip Generation Manual. The ITE's trip generation manual is the most widely used source of traffic standards for different kinds of streets. Towns and cities throughout the country use ITE formula for determining appropriate amounts of traffic for various kinds of streets. Among other authorities, California's Department of Transportation, Caltrans, prescribes the ITE manual to calculate trip generation rates. If you actually use ITE's formula, you find that traffic volume on Upper Marchmont should not exceed 485 vehicle trips per 24-hour day, based on the number of homes and type of homes that are there. 485 trips is a number that is already exceeded in the current situation, let alone after the proposed enrollment expansion. In addition to not answering the question of what amount of total daily traffic is appropriate, the EIR also fails to explain why ITE traffic standards cannot be used to do so. Why would a standard that is such widely used and prescribed by Caltrans not be appropriate in this case? Through our questions submitted during the NOP period, we made very clear that our key problem is total daily traffic. Hillbrook has been spreading its traffic throughout the day, so that now full day traffic is as heavy or heavier than ever. In summary, specific questions were raised during the NOP period, asking the EIR to assess acceptable levels of average daily traffic for Upper Marchmont Drive. A widely accepted method to assess such levels, the Trip Generation Manual by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, exists and is endorsed by authorities such as Caltrans. Applying this very method to Upper Marchmont Drive reveals that acceptable levels are up to 485 vehicle trips per day, which is already exceeded by current use levels. Finally, the EIR fails to answer the question on acceptable levels of ADT and fails to explain why the ITE standards cannot be used in the Hillbrook impact assessment. Consequently, we are seriously concerned that the report has insufficiently evaluated the impact of the traffic load to Hillbrook on the quality of life and safety of residents of Upper Marchmont Drive. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Dodson?
Good evening. My name is Don Dodson, and I live at 239 Marchmont Drive. I believe the draft EIR is seriously flawed. During the NOP period, we asked that the report use the tool, which you just heard about, published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. The preparers did not do this and did not respond in any way to our request. Instead, they used something called the TIRE, or Tire Traffic Index. TIRE stands for Traffic Infusion of Residential Environments. The TIRE index analysis supposedly measures how much traffic can be added to a residential street before people start to notice. A national consulting firm, Fair & Peers, advises against TIRE. This is what they wrote in 2011. While the TIRE index provides a convenient method for measuring relative increases on residential streets, it is not backed by robust research. Fair & Peers does not recommend using the TIRE method, and we have not seen it used much in recent years. The draft EIR bases all of its scenarios and 2 of its 3 recommended alternatives on this method. Yet the report itself acknowledges that the TIRE index is not a design standard or a town standard, and that it has many limitations. The draft EIR inaccurately claims to use the method only for informational purposes. The report presents a TIRE index chart showing that the appropriate amount of traffic for a minor 2-lane street like Upper Marchmont should be only 100 daily trips. Elsewhere, it states that a street exhibits a significantly impaired residential environment if it has more than 891 daily trips. It gives the average for Upper Marchmont in 2011 at 947 daily trips, twice the level recommended by the ITE methodology, and 9 times the level that the draft EIR itself says is an appropriate level for that kind of street. The report then uses TIRE to recommend its environmentally superior alternative, which would add yet another 234 trips. The report claims that residents would not notice. I assure you that residents will notice any additional traffic generated by Hillbrook. Even if we were blind to the increase, that would not make safety issues magically disappear, nor can we count on voluntary regulation efforts.
Mr. Dotson?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Patty Elliott? I have to take a break.
I'm Patty Elliott, a 20-year resident on Marchmont Drive. This EIR is so defective that its conclusions should be rejected outright. I'll focus on just one deficiency, but this deficiency alone should cause the Commission to entirely reject the EIR. Hillbrook wants to expand its middle school in grades 6 to 8. According to Hillbrook, 90% of its 5th to 8th grade students participate in after-school sports. After-school sports bring significant additional traffic to the neighborhood outside of the peak periods in the afternoon from 2:30 to 3:45 p.m. According to the Nelson Nygaard TDM, nearly half of the students stay on campus after 4:30 for after-school activities. That's half of the current 315 students. Add another 99 students to that, because virtually all of them do after-school sports, and you have up to 256 Hillbrook students on campus after the peak period. What is the impact of that? That's a whole new peak period. Has that been studied? There's no mention of it whatsoever. It's not addressed at all. What's more, none of the sports-related afternoon traffic is addressed in the traffic mitigation measures currently in the CUP or in the TDM that the EIR relies on. In fact, the TDM reflects that students with activities who stay on campus past 3:45 do not carpool or ride the bus. That is absolutely ignored in the EIR. But there's more that makes the EIR defective. All of the full-day traffic counts reflected in the EIR as average daily traffic were taken on days when there were virtually no after-school sports activities. The May 16 to 22, 2011 counts in the 2012 traffic study, there was only one athletic event that entire week. Neighbors pointed that out, but apparently that didn't matter, because lo and behold, when they did the traffic study in 2013, they counted on March 18th through 22, and there were 0 after-school sporting events on the Hillbrook campus. Why does the EIR neglect to account for the sports-related traffic? You don't have to look very hard to find these times when these sports events are occurring. What about up here, March 25th? Eight in that 1 week, 8 games. That's typical. There were 82 home sports games at Hillbrook from September to February this school year. So the so-called average weekday counts reflected in Table 4 do not reflect any average that neighbors are aware of. None of the numbers in this massive report are representative of the typical impact Hillbrook traffic has on our neighborhood in the afternoons. Therefore, all of the traffic analysis in the EIR and all of its conclusions should be rejected. Please require that a full and accurate traffic study be conducted that reflects the true impact of Hillbrook's traffic on our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call 4 names now. Kathleen Willie or Wiley, if you could step forward. Behind her will be Mark Jameson, Barbara Dotson, and R.J. Bariani. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Kathleen Willie, and I live on Cardinal Lane. I first want to mention that the neighbors appreciated Hillbrook reaching out last year with various neighborhood meetings to hear our concerns and to give thanks to the Hillbrook staff, parents, and children who do currently use carpooling, busing, walking, and biking to get to the school. We all know that Hillbrook is a wonderful school that produces many outstanding contributing members of the community. However, that is not what this meeting is about. I want to focus on two things in the DEIR, or report: unsupported claims about traffic reduction and problems with the data itself. According to this report, the average daily traffic in 2011, as circled, was 880. The average in 2013, after Hillbrook's traffic program, or TDM, was 878. There is basically no difference. Look at the darkened section from Table 4. We only have 3 days of usable data, and on 2 of those 3 days, Monday and Tuesday, it actually increased, not decreased. Now look at the headings on column 3 and 4. Both give data from Baymetrics raw data tables from 2013. Both show that traffic increased on 2 of the 3 days with usable data. However, the numbers in column 3 and 4 are different, and so are the averages. There are 2 sets of data for the same dates, and they give different numbers. Also, if you use average counts from the speed survey data, there is a drop of 66 daily trips from the 2011 average, an 8% drop. If you use the counts from the ADT data, there is no drop in traffic from the 2011 full-day counts. Now look at table below 4.3.2. This table claims a 13% drop in eastbound traffic and a 12% drop in westbound traffic at the Hillbrook gate. How can that be when the full-day drop is at most only 8%? This report is dependent upon these counts. So if the accuracy of the counts are in question, then this entire DEIR is in question. The general conclusion of this report, my helper, sorry, is that there is no impact on traffic and safety. Seriously, the most important reason I reject this DEIR is neighborhood children. I ask any of you here tonight, do you honestly believe that, as stated on page 12 in Appendix C, that an estimated 276 more cars will not have an impact on traffic and safety? We also believe this number is largely underestimated. We are asking you to please reject this very flawed DEIR. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up would be Mark Jameson.
Hello, my name is Mark Jameson, and thank you for allowing me to comment on the draft EIR. The draft EIR is based on data that I believe is insufficient, unreliable, and inconsistent. There's not enough data for the conclusions that are made, and the data itself changes from page to page. An EIR based on this kind of data should not be certified. Let me start with this table on the overhead. This is table 4.3-5 of the draft EIR. And the table shows outbound trips for the 7:30 to 8:30 a.m. peak time. And the latest number is 107. It also shows peak data from the 2:30 to 3:45 time period, which is 125. But the data in the 2 tables to the right, the outbound school peak data is cut down from 1 hour and 15 minutes just to 1 hour. So the outbound data point used for many of the traffic calculations is 113, not the 125 that they got in this number. It's cut down to 113 because that's just for 1 hour period of time, when the current CUP states that the PM peak period is 1 hour and 15 minutes. This lowers the total number of outbound cars to a smaller window of 1 hour, which lowers the rate of cars leaving per 315 students. Because of this, any data that uses the rate of outbound trips in the PM peak period should be invalid. And there are many calculations based on traffic rates of 0.73 which are these numbers here. And the 0.73 calculation is used to estimate the total trips with the increase of enrollment. This 0.73, if you actually use 125 instead of 113, you get total trips over 165. So in my limited time, I presented one basic example that I found just very unreliable, cutting down the PM peak period just to 1 hour to make the data look better. An EIR should provide sufficient, solid, and reliable information. This EIR doesn't do that, and I ask, please do not certify the EIR in this condition. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Barbara Dodson.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Dodson, and I live on Marchmont Drive. I urge you not to certify this EIR unless it is corrected. The report completely fails to satisfy the town requirement that the maximum level of traffic mitigation be used on streets adjacent to homes and schools. This policy does not apply only to significant traffic impacts under CEQA. It is an all-inclusive blanket statement in the general plan. Hillbrook's current traffic program is flawed. It is voluntary. It has no traffic reduction targets. It has not reduced overall traffic. Some carpooling and participation in busing happens in the mornings, but almost none in the afternoons. The 3:30 buses go out with 8 to 20 children, and 5 p.m. buses go out empty. This so-called mitigation program results in up to 1,100 trips on our streets. This program cannot by any stretch of the imagination be called a maximum level of mitigation. Maximum mitigation would include all access points to the school. This means that it would include the Ann Arbor access. With maximum mitigation, participation would be mandatory. Here are examples of what maximum mitigation might look like. These examples include a mix of walking, biking, plus busing and carpooling, busing only, staff carpools, or no staff carpools. In all examples, participation is mandatory. A carpool is 3 or more students, and buses hold 30 students. 35 trucks and visitors are assumed. Examples 1 and 4 use the Marchmont side only and result in 372 trips with carpooling plus busing, or 256 trips with busing only. Examples 2 and 3 use Marchmont and Ann Arbor. Example 2 gives 296 trips on Marchmont and 168 on Ann Arbor. Example 3 gives 284 trips on Marchmont and 70 on Ann Arbor. The Archer School for Girls in Los Angeles also uses a good system. Archer mandates that carpools have at least 3 students. Each carpool has a number and a permit with that number on it that must be displayed upon entry to campus. Buses, public transit, and walking, biking can also be used. Students must register their mode of travel at the beginning of the school year. They are then committed to that mode of travel for the entire year. Measures are included for emergencies and doctor's visits. This is what we expected from the report: viable ideas for maximum traffic mitigation. Instead, we got scenarios that dump ever-increasing amounts of traffic on our neighborhood. The report says the current program might be made mandatory. This means the school would urge carpooling, buses would be available, but no one would have to participate in the program. In a worst-case scenario, no one would take part in the program at all because it is completely voluntary. This report should not be certified until it includes scenarios for maximum traffic mitigation in compliance with the general plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dodson. I'm going to call RJ, and I know you'll correct me on the pronunciation of your last name.
Thank you.
And right behind you will be Kim Ringen, Ruel Wavkov, and Aaron Wensian. So you're challenging me this evening, but please correct me when you come up to the,
All tough
the
names.
podium.
All
Yes,
tough
thank
names.
you.
Thank you. My name is Arya Barirani. You were very close.
I live on Stony Brook Road, and I'm a parent of a first grader and a second grader who go to Blossom Hill Elementary School. These kids, incidentally, no longer walk or scooter to school because of the traffic hazards in our neighborhood. I'm here to strongly urge you to not certify this DEIR. This EIR is defective, it's filled with inconsistencies and omissions. The specific area that I'd like to draw your attention to is the use of the number 165 as the appropriate threshold or target that it bases essentially all of its conclusions around. This threshold is effectively the exit count during peak periods that was determined in the 2001 CUP 13 years ago. Actually, the number back in 2001 was 150 with a 15% margin, which raises it to 165. EIR does not take any of that into account. The EIR offers no research or data or any hint of a suggestion as to why 165 is a good or solid threshold. The fact of the matter is measuring traffic using exit counts during peak periods is a faulty way of measuring the actual true impact of traffic into the neighborhood. Why? Because measured this way, you can have as many cars go into the school property during peak hours, but have them actually exit during non-peak hours. And in fact, that's what happens every day. By all parties' counts, it's shown consistently that specifically during peak hours in the morning, many cars go into Hillbrook, but they actually leave throughout the day. So looking at just the exit count is not an accurate way to look at the traffic. Let me be very, very clear. If I want an accurate count of the traffic going in and out of Hillbrook in a given day, then why would I only count the number exiting in 1 hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon? Maybe I'm missing something, but our children walking to and from school are impacted by vehicles entering and exiting Hillbrook. And that is the central failure of this EIR, because it uses 165 exit count as the target number that it bases all of its conclusions around. And that number is faulty to begin with. Now, as a point of comparison, Harker currently runs a preschool on their Union Street location. They will be migrating their K through 5 kids to that Union campus by around 2020. They have published their target thresholds on their website. They use a traffic consultant to come up with the number. For 600 students, Harker and the City of San Jose have agreed to a published total round-trip count, not an exit count, but a round-trip count of 370. That's 185 cars in and 185 cars out. This EIR has zero analysis or research that it bases its conclusions on, that number accurately reflects the true impact of the traffic. So in conclusion, I'm here to strongly urge you not to certify this EIR. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next up, I'm calling Kim Vringen, and I know you'll correct me. Should have listened more closely to whoever spoke before.
Hi, my name is Kim Vryan, and I live at 268 Marchmont Drive. Although I too have wonderful things to say about Hillbrook as a school, my speech today will concentrate on tonight's agenda item, the DEIR. I would like to talk to you about some of the many inconsistencies and examples of bad data that I've found in the section 4.3, Transportation and Traffic. On page 4.3-6, the DEIR states that at the Marchmont High-Low intersection, TJKM staff during the AM peak hour had, and I quote, a maximum observed queue of 2 vehicles. Here's a picture taken last week of the same intersection with 4 to 6 vehicles at each of the 4 stop signs. This was taken in one 10-minute period. This is what I personally experience every day when when I bike to Blossom Hill Elementary with my 2 children on their bikes next to me. Of course, the statement in the DIR is based on observations in 2011. This intersection has had a traffic increase since then. Exactly how much of an increase? I don't know. Apparently no one does, because the DEIR presents 2 different figures for this intersection and almost all intersections compared. As you can see, the pages and the tables are listed. They're both part of the DEIR. The numbers vary in all of the boxes that are circled in yellow. Although there's no inconsistency on the size of the increase, the tables do show that traffic has increased in both directions on High-Low, both north and south of Marchmont. Of course, have no fear, the note at the bottom of table 4.3-4 assures us that traffic volumes do not change appreciably in Los Gatos over 2 years. Or do they? Oops, sorry, I didn't know this would be so far away. Making the situation particularly confusing for the neighbors is the fact that page 4.3-25 states that the project will not increase any queue length by more than one vehicle. Based on the reported maximum queue length of 2 vehicles at most, 1 extra vehicle is stated as being acceptable to the town. My question is, does the town still find it acceptable when added to the current queue lengths? Of course, TJKM also evaluated the level of service for various intersections. The intersection of Monchmont and Englewood is currently rated as an A-grade level of service in Table 4.31. TJKM estimates that this even with the increase of the average daily afternoon, it'll remain an A, or does it? The delay is now expected to be 10.3 seconds, which by my math falls between 10 and 15, making it a B-grade intersection. Raw data in Appendix F also agrees that it's a B grade. Is it a typo? I leave it up to you to decide.
Thank you. Mr. Wavkov?
My name is Roel Warkov.
Thank you.
I live at 269 Marchmont Drive. We've been there for 19 years. The entire traffic study portion of the DEIR that you're reviewing this evening rests essentially on a house of cards and is fatally defective. We're talking about a conditional use permit here. A condition that is not mandatory is no condition at all. We need this to be mandatory. The entire traffic demand management plan, upon which all of the assumptions about carpooling, busing, and other traffic mitigation programs is based, is entirely voluntary. We have been down this road before with Hillbrook. I've been here before. In 2001, the CUP contained a voluntary carpooling promise. Here we are. The caps in the so-called peak periods, particularly in the afternoons, are completely ineffective as a traffic mitigation measure. Sure, Hillbrook typically keeps traffic to below 165 vehicles exiting during the 2:30 p.m. to 3:45 p.m. time frame. But there's a constant flow of student traffic both before and after those so-called peak periods on most afternoons. When the traffic caps went into place in 2001, this is exactly what neighbors were concerned about and what the town council said they would not permit. But here we are 13 years later, just where neighbors thought we would be. Hillbrook's head of school has acknowledged that afternoon carpooling and busing is, quote, not convenient, quote, for the older students because of their after-school activities. We have evidence of that every day when the massive empty school bus goes up and down our streets in the afternoon. Well, that's exactly where Hillbrook wants to expand, in that very same middle school. Without a mandatory full-day vehicle trip limit, this so-called TDM is worthless. The DER that rests its assumptions on the TDM is also worthless. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. The residents surrounding the Hillbrook School will not be fooled again. As soon as Hillbrook got its buildings approved under the 2001 CUP, the carpool program went out the window. Hillbrook School did not even bother to file its CUP required carpooling reports from 2008 to 2012. It didn't matter. It was only voluntary. Once again, Hillbrook is promising they'll be good. A promise is not good enough. It needs to be mandatory. We need a maximum full-day trip limit of 400 vehicle trips for its 220 families. And yes, neighbors have already provided them with scenarios that can get them to those points. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to call Erin Wensian, and then right behind Ms. Wensian will Hugh Wang, Robin Blum, and Heather Del Chilio, or Chilio, or Chi. You'll tell me. All right.
Hi, good evening, Commission. My name is Erin Wensing. I live at 16634 Marchmont Drive, and I really appreciate you hearing our concerns about the emissions of the draft EIR. So I'll take my few minutes to discuss summer traffic, because it's really about the traffic. We all know Hillbrook's a great school. There's great people that go there, and there's a lot of people trying, but the traffic is really, as you hear, an issue. So the current draft EIR does really not address summer traffic as a separate issue. It takes a position it doesn't need to do this because it bases some conclusions on the 2012 TJKM traffic study. Well, this didn't really address summer traffic as a separate issue either. So it's our understanding that in the new CUP, Hillbrook is planning on having same peak period traffic during the summer as during the school year. Well, the problem with this is summer's just a different beast in of itself, not just for Hillbrook, but for all of us in the surrounding areas. Prior to 2010, actually, the traffic was tolerable during the summer. But then in 2011, Hillbrook paid Stephen Cates Camp, and we all know that was a disaster, and they went over limits. And so the question is now, with summer camps running anywhere between 2, 8, 6, 12 weeks, there's no real definition as to how long the summers are, and maximums could be maintained without really understanding what the structure of the summer is like. So basically, and one further point is that the public schools in the area also have summer camps. And they rotate them. They rotate them from Blossom Hill to Dave's to Van Meter to try not to be a burden on one particular neighborhood every summer. So as they rotate it, that would change as well when the summer camp came to Blossom Hill. So our concern is that summer traffic is just completely different from school year traffic, and it was not studied at all separately. So therefore, it appears this report really, we urge you not to certify it, because until separate information is generated for the summer, because summer traffic is completely different from the school year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, Hugh Wong.
Good evening. My name is Hugh Wang. I live in 220 Marchmont Drive. I'm here to express my concern on Hillbrook's summer traffic. The Hillbrook School is proposing a modification to its current CUP that would allow a huge increase in summer traffic. Past Hillbrook summer traffic has been so low that neighbors hardly notice. Now, Hillbrook is proposing a summer limit that would allow up to average of 165 cars leaving the school each morning and each afternoon, just as for the regular school year. That means summer traffic could be as high as during the regular school year. That would allow a huge increase in traffic over past summers. And the neighbors are certainly sure to notice. We want our 2 small children and other children in the neighborhood to be able to play in our front yard during the summer without constantly have to worry about heavy Hillbrook traffic. The school claims they care about the neighbors. If they do, they would not be asking for such a huge increase that would put my children and all the neighbors' children in harm's way during the summer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Robin Blum.
Hello, Commission members. My name is Robin Blum, and I live on Stony Brook Road with my husband and 2 young children in the same home that my grandparents lived in for nearly 50 years. I want to talk about 2 things today. The report's failure to look at Stony Brook, and then the report's failure to use the ITE formula for evaluating appropriate levels of traffic on residential streets. Large numbers of the Hillbrook community use Stony Brook to cut through from Kennedy. It is a narrow, curved street with a blind S-curve. When turning left onto Stony Brook from Kennedy, you need to drive around a stately oak tree. Many times drivers turn before or in front of the oak tree into the wrong lane, nearly hitting cars and the many pedestrians and cyclists who also use this road. Within the last 8 months, there have been 2 accidents that I'm aware of with a truck turning onto Stony Brook hitting the tree and a collision between a car traveling down Kennedy and a car turning from Stony Brook. And on this street of only 7 houses, a car has crashed up onto our own front yard as recently as 2012, and years back, a car crashed into my neighbor's garage and into the house itself. Also, even though the street is narrow, people need to park on the street, so there really isn't room for heavy traffic. But Stony Brook has heavy Hillbrook traffic in the morning and at other times during the day. We asked that the EIR look at the obvious safety issues with the Stony Brook-Kennedy intersection and on Stony Brook itself, but this request was really just brushed aside. Stony Brook is not even named in maps used in this report. This is unacceptable, and this report should not be certified until it provides traffic data and a full analysis of conditions on Stony Brook. Secondly, I want to point out a major oversight in the report. The neighborhood wants Hillbrook to be limited to a total daily traffic of 400 vehicle trips. This is based on information from the ITE formula that we've already talked about. One of our questions submitted during the NOP period was, what total daily volume of traffic is appropriate for a local dead-end street like Upper Marchmont Drive? To answer this question, we asked the DEIR to use the formula that I'm going to put on the overhead. We didn't find information for single access streets like Upper Marchmont, so we supplied the formula for local residential streets. As you can see, the formula gives the appropriate level of traffic for Upper Marchmont as 485 daily vehicle trips. We would like to know why the report didn't even mention this formula. The DEIR should not be certified until it explains why this formula is not relevant or uses the formula to evaluate appropriate levels of daily traffic in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blum. And before the next speaker steps up, I just want to say after the speaker, we're going to take a very quick break, maybe 3 to 4 minutes. If you have any additional cards, you need to get them up to us. Because at a certain point, I will cut off the cards, just given the lateness of the hour. I can tell you we have another probably hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes of hearing after our quick break. So just giving you a heads up, if you need to fill out a card, please bring it forward so that we can put it into our account for this evening. All right, next speaker, Heather. And I know you're going to tell me your wonderful last name.
Heather Dalcello.
Yes, Delcello, thank you.
Marchmont Drive. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. This DEIR should not be certified until it addresses all the relevant requirements from the Los Gatos General Plan. The Hillbrook expansion project needs to be consistent with the Los Gatos General Plan according to the CEQA. The DEIR leaves out significant elements from the transportation and land use sections of the General Plan, and here are a few examples. TRA 5.4, limit new development that increases commercial traffic flow through residential neighborhoods. Hillbrook already generates high-frequency commercial traffic, such as garbage, FedEx, UPS, mail, daily food service trucks, linen service, and other deliveries. A more than 31% increase in the student population, with an accompanying increase in faculty staff, will generate a significant increase in both regular and commercial traffic. Policy LU 4.3, only approve projects for which public costs can be justified by the overall benefit to the community. The detrimental impact highly outweighs any potential benefits to Los Gatos if a Hillbrook expansion were approved. As a nonprofit, the school pays no property or income taxes. According to the Hillbrook website, 2/3 of the students come from outside of Los Gatos, so Hillbrook offers little relief to local schools. Public costs for the project include excessive traffic, reduced public safety, increased air and noise pollution, degraded streets, reduced quality of life, and significant municipal liability. Goal LU-1, to preserve, promote, and protect the existing small-town character and quality of life within Los Gatos. Hillbrook was once a small country day school. It now seems intent on becoming a much larger school and major educational activity center. In my opinion, this scenario is similar to having a small convenience store on your street and then hearing plans of a Walmart being considered. Policy Policy TRA-9.1, make land use decisions that encourage walking, bicycling, and public transit use. Neighborhood streets are already highly impacted when Hillbrook traffic is present. The DEIR did not address that increased enrollment at Hillbrook would result in fewer residents walking or biking in the area. Current traffic levels already discourage residents from walking and biking. Lastly, both the general plan and policy LU-6 prohibits uses that may lead to the deterioration of residential neighborhoods or adversely impacts public safety and should work to protect existing residential areas from the impacts of non-residential development. So why didn't the report address these key protections? In my opinion, it is because traffic increases from a Hillbrook expansion would in fact degrade our neighborhood and threaten public safety. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And so we're going to take a break, but when we come back, I'm going to call Gretchen Moore, Bern Nissen, and Bridget Morton. So they should be lined up and ready to go in 5 minutes. Right, we're going to resume the hearing on the matter of the DEIR for Marchmont property. And Gretchen Moore, please step forward and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Gretchen Moore, and my husband and I and 3 young children live at 16465 Hilo Road. I urge you to not certify this EIR for 2 reasons. First, the report concludes residents of Hilo would not notice the increase in traffic created by an approved Hillbrook CUP application. Secondly, the report finds no traffic and safety issues with the shuttle bus stop on Shannon Road at Blossom Hill Park. Tables 3.33 and 3.37 in the report show there will be a 63% increase in southbound traffic alone on Hilo Road if the Hillbrook CUP is approved. I do not understand how this increase in traffic can be unnoticeable. Hilo Road is heavily used by families in the neighborhood from Shannon to Kennedy Roads as a means to walk, bike, and scooter to schools. Every incremental car that goes down our street poses a safety risk. The draft EIR states the bus stop on Shannon Road at Blossom Hill Park was reviewed by the Los Gatos Monte Sereno Police Department and no hazards were found. Was the bus not observed stopping on the road in the bike lane? Were children not observed biking outside the bike lane and around the bus into traffic? Were cars not observed cutting through the parking lot to get around the backup created by the bus? I have witnessed all of these things in a single morning and have reported them to the police department and the safety officer and principal at Blossom Hill School. The fact is, the location of this bus stop on the street in the bike lane, where parking is not allowed from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., continues to create problems and unintended consequences. A few years ago, the neighborhood and the Blossom Hill Elementary and Fisher Middle School communities took issue to Google creating a bus stop on the street in the bike lane on Shannon Road near the schools because of the safety issues it created. After some unflattering televised press, Google thought best to move their bus stop into the parking lot at the Los Gatos Presbyterian Church. Hillbrook has been asked to do the same, but has ignored this request. The report fails to even consider this as a safer option, lending to the appearance of a double standard. A 63% increase in traffic on a street full of kids walking to and from school and a bus stop location that was deemed too unsafe for Google to use but is okay for Hillbrook to use seem like significant environmental impacts to me. I would strongly urge you to address these issues and not certify the EIR. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Next up, Burr Neeson.
Bernison, 103 Cardinal Lane, and I want to thank you people for serving and listening to us. We are gathered here this evening because Hillbrook wants to grow, and because of that, what do we all know? It means another CUP application has been created, and suggested changes in traffic and transportation are the main issues that must be debated. The residents on Marchmont and the affected streets of this fact are not amused because the current CUP in recent years has been blatantly abused. Yes, an environmental report has been crafted, 295 pages, on potential impacts, less than significant. That's the main theme. Mitigation measures? Perhaps two. It's like a bad dream. So it appears to say 90 new students will not affect Marchmont traffic east of Hilo in any way. My knowledge of math is most humble. In math class, I fiddled like Nero. But does a desired 30% growth in school population really equal zero? There is a 37-word proposed modification sentence in which some unknown author did the English language mangle. I would appreciate it if the Planning Commission its true meaning could untangle. In this sentence, 165 maximum vehicles per AM and PM peak periods to 165 average vehicles per AM and PM peak periods. That's the wording requested to be changed. Does the applicant feel those possibly affected to be totally deranged? I have one more thing to say. Forsooth, there is a street yonder. It's called Ann Arbor Way. The street ends at the school. How cool. And to add to the debate, there is even a gate. And how about this for traffic to serve? There is no steep hill or S-curve. And it has a sidewalk on which no Hillbrook student can be seen or heard to walk or talk. Am I committing some sort of neighborhood treason to ask the reason? Thank you.
Well, I'm left speechless. And I was thinking how to rhyme that speechless, but I couldn't. So thank you. We'll go on to Bridget Morton.
I have to follow that. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Bridget Morton. I live at 120 Cardinal Lane. I'm one house from the corner of Stony Brook and Cardinal, so we're all impacted. So I urge you not to certify the EIR. This report is based on questionable data, which you've heard, and inconsistent statements. I'm here tonight. I'm reading for Steve Baratsoff. He's a neighbor who lives near the Hillbrook Gate, and he can't be here this evening, so he asked me to share some information. In March of 2013, the month when the data was collected for this report, Steve noticed that the traffic hoses on Upper Marchmont were disconnected. Steve took photos. So for at least that day, any data cannot be relied on. During the same week, Steve saw and talked with a TJKM traffic engineer who was sitting in his car on Karen Court, which intersects Marchmont. He was counting traffic by hand. Since the draft EIR continually refers to machine counts and never mentions hand counts, this brings additional data into question. On the inconsistent statements, Hillbrook's traffic consultant, Nelson Nygaard, held 2 meetings for neighbors in June and September 2012. Discussions focused on reducing overall traffic, since this is the neighbor's main concern. But by December 2012, in a report on how the plan was working, the traffic consultants were already focusing only on peak period traffic. This could be because, even though the traffic plan had only been in effect for 3 months, Hillbrook already recognized that it had no strategy to deal with overall traffic. The draft repeats this misrepresentation and states that the traffic plan was designed only to reduce the school's peak hour trips. The draft EIR often states that the traffic plan has reduced traffic without specifying that it is only talking about peak period traffic. The EIR should not be certified until it provides specific, mandatory ways in which Hillbrook will reduce its overall traffic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to call Marie Risto, and right behind her, Ali Khani, Darius Farabondi, and Jack Van Natta. So if you could line up. Yes.
Hi, I'm Maria Risto, 85 Broadway. As a downtown resident, I've got some experience in dealing with CUP changes and violations. I followed the evolution of Hillbrook School and the latest request for an increase in student enrollment. As you review the draft EIR, you should realize, as stated before, there are problems, deficiencies, and inaccuracies in this report. The draft EIR is supposed to respond to all relevant town policies. One town policy not addressed by the DEIR includes Policy TRA 9.1, make land use decisions that encourage walking, biking, and public transit use. Currently, the residents of Marchmont and the nearby streets feel traffic already discourages anything but more car travel. This is a dead-end street with no sidewalks, and all Hillbrook traffic has to go up and then right back down the same street. There are other options. The draft EIR did not address the fact that a further increase in enrollment at Hillbrook would result in an increase in traffic and potentially a decrease in residential walking and biking. A major deficiency in the report is that the option to open the Ann Arbor Gate was not even explored. Ann Arbor is a short, wide street with sidewalks on both sides and direct access to Shannon and Short Road. The possibility to create a one-way flow up Marchmont and then out Ann Arbor could solve so many problems. My husband and I have lived in Los Gatos since 1987. We enjoy walking and biking throughout town, and we have raised our children to walk and bike to school, to friends' houses, and shops. I would like all families in all parts of town to have this option. Please don't certify the draft EIR. Thank you.
Thank you. Ali Khani.
Good evening. Ali Khani, I live on 16495 Topping Way. I'm here along with my neighbors to point out the deficiency and lack of data in critical issues such as safety in this EIR. I go into the fact that when we first were buying our home in 1997, it was disclosed to us that there's extra traffic in the morning and afternoons due to Hillbrook School. We did our due diligence and monitored the traffic for a few days, decided it's acceptable, and bought the property. Things were fine, relatively consistent until 2009 and beyond, when Hillbrook started the after extra hours and weekend activities, some of which was in violation of CUP. Added traffic to the periods that we were not accustomed to. In the meantime, our neighborhood has been in transition. Properties that used to be one or two person sold, bigger homes built, younger family with kids move in. As a result, more traffic and more safety issue. Having said the above, bring me to my point that more traffic creates more safety concern, more chances of accidents. In this report, in this EIR report, related to the traffic accidents report, they used data from June 2008 to May 2010. Imagine how much has changed in the last 4 years in our neighborhood, again, based on the families with more kids and, of course, the extra activities that I mentioned earlier by Hillbrook. I bring a little personal experience here. I take my granddaughter to park usually in the late afternoons, and numerous times I've had to sort of wait up few cars pass to cross high-low to get to the sidewalk. Now, granted, these cars are not all going to Hillbrook. However, that brings to my point, that increase of more students is going to just add to the existing problems with the traffic in our neighborhood, and as a result, affect our safety. I basically urge the Planning Commission to not compromise the safety of our neighbors, and please do not certify this EIR. This report is based on questionable data and is not all clear to us and needs to be revised. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next up is Darius Farabandi.
I'm Darius Fanibanda. I live on the Lower Marchmont Drive. This is the tire index in the chart.
Sir, what I need for you to do is to take the microphone with you if you're going to be
Sure.
talking from that slide.
So this is the tire index in a chart. And the DEIR says that we will increase the index by only 0.1. And how deceptive that is. Because if you look at an increase of 0.1 in the lower part of the graph, from 1.0 to 2.0, there's only a difference of 100 cars. If you go from 2.9 to 3.0, there's a difference of 180 cars. So 0.1 increase in the index is deceptive. So this is a defective tool to begin with, and a report based on a defective tool generates an illusionary conclusion. So there's no reason to believe that a 0.1 increase would not affect the neighborhood.
Could you put the microphone up to your mouth? Thank you.
So 0.1 increase, 234 new cars from 3.0 to 2.9. That's only 180 cars. 234 cars would put us way beyond 3.0. That puts us in the range of significantly impaired traffic area. So I recommend that the DEIR should be denied because it's based on a defective tool. This tool should be thrown out or revised by somebody because on the left side, the number of cars, if you know anything about mathematics, that's an interval scale, and this is a logarithmic scale. It doesn't make sense to combine the two together. So just based on that, I recommend that the DEIR should be thrown out. Thank you.
Just put that mic right back. Thank you. Mr. Van Natta is going to be next, and then Bill Wagner, Joe Sordy, and Edward Lozowicki. Thank you. Mr. Van Natta.
Thank you. The 2011 traffic study reviewed 10 projects that will have an impact on the town. Of those, they included 2 single-family residences that have since been denied twice, a restaurant that seems irrelevant since it's in a location already designated as a retail store, a car dealership that did not get zoned for AHOZ, and Ditto Lane, which lost its funding to 33 apartments, or 433 apartments 2 years ago. It did include the Honda dealership, the used car lot for Honda, which was at that time being looked at for 10 residences. Since then, I believe that's doubled to about 20. The study does not include the 7,000 square foot building at Shannon and Los Gatos Boulevard, just about 100 feet south of the intersection. It also missed 89 homes on Guadalupe Mines Road that will be sending kids to the Los Gatos schools, and they'll be driving Blossom Hill Road and Shannon to get to Los Gatos. The EIR and the town need to be more emphatic and demanding about solutions to the problems caused to the residents of the Marchmont High-Low area. If this growth is approved, I suggest that there is a strong consideration for opening traffic through Ann Arbor as an exit only, which is a wider street already with sidewalks. This would cut the impact in half for the Marchmont residents. I would suggest making carpooling and busing mandatory and enforce it. This is a neighborhood street. It's not a major arterial. No neighborhood street should have a level of service at D. Neighborhood streets should max out at B, even during commute hours. By all means possible, enforce the cups, old and new, that haven't been enforced for years. This is not something this town has been very good at if you ask the residents at Marchmont or Broadway. You can't set rules that you know will be ignored, and if you can't enforce the rules, then you don't allow the growth. The neighbors should not have to move out of their neighborhood to accommodate the growth of Hillbrook. Rather, Hillbrook might consider, as Valley Christian and Harker have done, moving to more commercial environments. Hillbrook is, after all, a business, and a business that does not pay any taxes to the town of Los Gatos and yet cost the town money. Please reject the DEIR, have it recreated with accurate information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Natta. Next is Bill Wagner.
Good evening. I'm Bill Wagner. I live on Hilo Road. My wife Deborah and I have lived there for over 20 years, and we live right about in the middle of Hilo, about halfway between Shannon and Marchmont. I am a civil engineer, but I'm actually here tonight talking as a resident to give you my personal experiences of the situation. And what I'd like to talk about are the traffic conditions, speed, and safety issues on Hilo, and how the EIR and the traffic study does not adequately address these issues and the impacts on our neighborhood. As you've heard from a lot of people, there are existing speed and safety problems on Hilo Road. Hilo is and these problems will be made worse by adding traffic to Hilo Road, even a limited amount. Hilo is a very wide street. It's wider than most of the other streets in the area. It's probably about the widest residential street in all of Los Gatos. It has no sidewalks, but there's still a lot of pedestrian and bicycle traffic because it is kind of a major corridor to Blossom Hill Park. But because of its width, people drive too fast. And there's plenty of studies that have indicated that's the natural tendency. When a street is wide, people will drive faster than they should. But at the end, near Topping and Marchmont, it funnels down into a one-way section that's posted at 10 miles an hour. But people come blasting down Hilo, and they will barely slow down at all as they cut through that one-lane section. Sight distance is extremely limited, and there's lots of opportunities or a lot of challenges and potential hazards. At the other end, near Shannon, sight distance is also limited by vegetation and hedges, and it's not a controlled intersection. There is no stop sign, so it's often very difficult to make turns. So all of those combinations, fast cars, kids, bikes, make the street very hazardous, and we don't feel that it's adequately addressed in the EIR. It's hard to read, but this is table 2 out of the traffic study. And the highlighted line on this table indicates what's called the 85th percentile speeds on Hilo Road, north of Marchmont. And it shows that the posted speed at this, based on these studies, is 25 mile an hour, but that the actual 85th percentile speeds were 23 and 24 miles an hour, which means that 15% of the cars are actually going faster than that. That actually sounds pretty good, but it also says that speeds on other streets on Topping and Marchmont are 27, 28 miles an hour. And if anybody has driven in the neighborhood, you would recognize that speeds are higher on Hilo. But if you actually look at the details of the study, those speeds were measured.
Mr. Wagner, I'm sorry to do this to you, but I do need to cut you off, and your 3 minutes is up. However, I encourage you to submit all of your documentation and your comments in a written form to us so that we can hear, so that we will get the full impact of everything.
I will do that. And what I'm trying to point out is that this is the location those speeds are measured, which is posted as 10 miles an hour.
Right. Sir, you really need to wrap it up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know you have a lot of people on it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Sordi? And I just want to caution everyone, I am keeping to the 3-minute time limit so that we can get through it and get home before the carriage turns into the pumpkin. Where's our poet? I'm sure there would be some phrase for it. Thank you. Please go ahead.
My name is Joe Sordy. I live at 212 Marchmont Drive. The biggest mistake in the draft may be the comparison of 4 days of traffic counts taken in May of 2011 to 4 days taken in March of 2013. Using the March 2013 counts completely ignores the first 6 months of the TDM. The TDM started in September of 2012. And it also completely ignores a full year of counts taken since. So we have amazingly 4 days of counts used when we have all these other that are not being used. The 2011 counts taken at the gate vary from 800 to 924. And the 2013 counts vary from 800 to 941. Wouldn't you expect the counts for each day to be about the same? Why do they vary so much over a 4-day period? The chart I have up there shows just the first day of these 4-day counts, okay? The 924 that you see is, and the 941 in the table are for the first day of those 4-day counts. And it doesn't, in other words, it doesn't include the 3 days following each. I also included a TJM count that was taken a week before the Baymetric counts in March. That 947 that you see there, that was taken a week before the Baymetric counts. I also included a neighborhood count that we took at the gate in January of 2014, and that's 918. So you can look at those numbers, and they all look the same, okay? I think I'm missing some of my stuff here. Okay, I also added, let's see. Note that these are all considerably higher than the counts taken the last 3 days of those 4-day counts. The first day of each of those 4 days is higher than the last 3 days of each of those 4 days. So one has to wonder what effect the appearance of a tube across the street at Hillbrook Gate has on counts taken after that first day. People come in and they see the tube, and the next day there's more traffic mitigation. Also, the lowest day of Baymetric's count is just 746, far lower than any counts, and far lower than counts taken by neighbors. So the validity of these counts is highly suspect, to say the least. If Hillbrook would be so kind as to release the 18 months of counts they have taken at the gate since the start of the TDM, a much more complete and accurate analysis of the TDM could be accomplished.
Thank you, Mr. Sordy. Next would be Edward Lazowicki, and then behind him, Greg Blum, Susan Berlitzoff, and Eric Fox.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the Commission. I know the hour is late, so I'll try to summarize my comments quickly. My name is Ed Lazowicki. I've lived at 223 Rosalie Court for 30 years now. I hate to think of that time, but it's been a long time. I've raised 3 children, one of whom was almost hit by a car going up to Hillbrook School several years ago. Public safety is the issue that I'm concerned with, and I do not believe it's adequately addressed in the draft EIR for several reasons. There are omissions in the draft. There are internal inconsistencies between the findings in the draft and the data that's presented. To visualize why we're concerned about public safety, I'd like to show you a few charts on the projector here. I call this chart the funnel, and it's a funnel because the neighborhood that I live in is right here. This is the main access to Hillbrook School, Marchmont, called Upper Marchmont or Eastern Marchmont. All of the access roads, Blossom Hill, High-Low, Stony Brook, Kennedy, all funnel in to this single street for access to and exit from Hillbrook School. It all funnels down into a single street. I live right here. I see it every day. Why is that a problem? This is what we see during the day. You're looking at the S-curve that I just pointed out on the chart. What you see here is a car coming into the S-curve eastbound and a young boy on a scooter right next to the car. It's dangerous. Other kids walk on this street. Other kids bike on this street. There are no sidewalks. It's a residential street. This is traffic going out of the S-curve. I've indicated the dates on which these photos are taken. These are cars coming up the hill, toward the hill, which is the direction that they're traveling in. Lots of traffic, folks. The DEIR does not take this situation adequately into account. Defect number one, they make a finding that pedestrian and bicycle safety is not compromised. But their own table 4.3-3, shows that the speeds on 4 of the 6 streets studied exceeded the speed limit. They also indicate at page 4.3-6 that the speeds that they calculated were measured at the gate of Hillbrook, where there is a stop sign and everybody slows down. It's an inaccurate measure. They should be measuring the speeds along the street where the traffic zips along. Finally, they say that there's no impact on safety because their accidents are minimal. They base that on 2 years only and 1 accident. You've heard testimony tonight that there have been at least 6 accidents in the last 10 years.
Sir, you know we have to cut you off. Thank you for your comments.
I do.
Again, just let me repeat, everyone can submit their comments, especially if they were written out. You can submit them right tonight. And if not, you can send them by email, etc. Mr. Paulson will tell you about that at the conclusion of the hearing. All right, Mr. Blum, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Greg Blum, and I live on Stony Brook Road with my wife and 2 young kids. I'm going to go in. We've heard a lot of really good data tonight. I'm going to go in and try to summarize a little bit why we feel that the alternatives that have been proposed in the DIR are just inadequate. So alternatives 2 and 3 are based on the tire index, which we've highlighted from previous speakers. That is not the best way. Even the report itself admits it's not the best way to measure the data. This immediately should make these alternatives questionable, and I think, again, we've shown that they are. Yet the report recommends that one of them is the environmentally superior alternative. Again, we don't think that's the case. Because there's no firm data or basis to recommend alternatives 2 and 3, the report should recommend the no project alternative. Now, a little bit more. The DIR rejects alternative 1, the no project alternative, on the basis that the current traffic programs that have been put in place by the school could be discontinued and traffic might actually increase. But in fact, the current program has been inadequate. Again, I think several people have shown that. Overall traffic throughout the day has increased, not decreased. Again, measuring this peak traffic, it's just not accurate. It needs to be a complete view of the traffic throughout the day. We really need to make sure that the DR looks at that, doesn't look at it at all. The current program, as we've talked about, is entirely voluntary. Really, if this is going to move forward, it should absolutely have some sort of mandatory programs put in place that are enforceable. Again, traffic's up, not down over time. Based on these points, the no project alternative really is clearly the best choice at this time based on the current EIR. Even if the ineffective TDM program were dropped, at least the neighborhood would not have to put up with the traffic from 99 more new students, the extra delivery truck trips, parent conference trips, new staff faculty trips, sports program trips, etc., related to the student increase. It really is unfortunate that a lot of time and money has been wasted in coming up with 2 alternatives in the DER that are based on unreliable and or false even claims. However, the EER has to be accurate for you guys to move forward. That's your job. And we really feel that this particular version of it needs to be rejected. Let's look at things like measuring total daily traffic. Let's look at things like mandatory traffic programs. And you have to look at things like a perfectly viable option like opening up the Ann Arbor gate in some form. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blum. Susan Baritsoff.
Good. You did it. My name is Susan Baritsoff, and our family has lived next to Hillbrook School for over 20 years. The point to be made tonight, I think, is that Hillbrook School traffic is unsafe. Those of us living on the streets that lead to Hillbrook need your help. All Hillbrook traffic must travel up Marchmont Drive, be it car, bus, truck, or pedestrian, and all must exit by the same route. And there are no sidewalks. And Hillbrook wants to grow. And Hillbrook wants more activities year-round. The idyllic country day school is gone, but a Harker Academy it cannot be. Consider this. Ann Arbor Drive is another street that leads to Hillbrook School. It has a gate to Hillbrook that is locked. It has sidewalks. They do not want any Hillbrook traffic. We have too much traffic. Something must be done. And I ask you to listen to the people here tonight who have worked so hard to get your attention. And please, use your good judgment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to call Eric Fox. Behind him, Rob Hakim, Chuck Hammers, and then the fourth one will be Steve Benjamin. If you could just queue up. So, Mr. Fox.
Thank you, and good evening to the members of the Planning Commission, and thank you for sticking with us late into the evening. I am Eric Fox. I'm a Los Gatos resident. I serve on the town's Parks Commission. I'm here not as a Parks Commissioner, but as a citizen, virtually a lifelong Los Gaton, and I am presently a Hillbrook parent and also an alum. I am speaking in support of the findings of the draft EIR that has been commissioned. The seriousness of an EIR is well understood by the Planning Commission, as it has reviewed very significant development proposals in recent years within Los Gatos. I work in the commercial real estate industry, and every developer knows, and every developer that I know understands, that an EIR is a very important document, and its accuracy can make or break a project, no matter how big or small that project may be, because of its autonomy, the autonomy of the report, because of its methodology. EIRs are important because of their exhaustive research, their reliance on data, real, independently observed, scientific data rigorously gathered and thoroughly analyzed, not by amateurs, but by professionals who have their work scrutinized by cities and towns throughout the state. As a Hillbrook parent, I was very pleased to see the results of the EIR that reaffirmed the previously issued negative declaration supporting the proposed increase in Hillbrook's enrollment cap. I was pleased because I know how hard the Hillbrook community has worked to develop a traffic mitigation plan, and the EIR is confirmation to all of us who drop our children off at bus pickup instead of at school, and that we are indeed reducing traffic impact on the neighborhood and its residents. Hillbrook has complied with and gone beyond the high standards of the Los Gatos community. As a Los Gatos resident, I'm also pleased about the EIR results. With enrollment at Los Gatos elementary schools stretched to capacity, if not beyond, I find it wonderful that there's a solution created by an increase in enrollment at Hillbrook that would both have less than significant impact on the school's neighbors, as defined by the EIR, while simultaneously assisting in alleviating overcrowding in Los Gatos schools. Historically, about half of Hillbrook students are residents in the Los Gatos School District, so the positive impacts of the increase in Hillbrook's enrollment can be enjoyed by the entire Los Gatos education community. Hillbrook is a wonderful school that reflects the values of the Los Gatos community. I support the EIR's findings and look forward to a modification of the CUP in line with its findings.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Next up, Rob Hakim.
Good evening. My name is Rob Hakim. I live on Eastview Drive in Los Gatos. I've lived and worked in the Bay Area for 32 years. My wife Dawn and I have been members of Los Gatos Montessorino community for the past 16 years. My wife attended Hillbrook in the 70s along with 3 of her 4 siblings. In fact, my sister and brother-in-law lived on Marchmont along with their daughter from 2007 to 2012. Our son Jake is currently in 2nd grade and proudly attended Hillbrook for the past 4 years. Along the way, we met some great, amazing families through our association with the school, many who we anticipate being lifelong friends. It is fair to note that our family history is woven together with an intersection of the past, the present, and the future, all interconnected by the parallel growth of this school, this neighborhood, and the town of Los Gatos. So it is as a Hillbrook parent, Los Gatos resident, neighbor, and friend that I share my opinion. Los Gatos is one of the most desired locations in the entire Bay Area to call home, moderated by the efforts of this community to preserve and care for the respect of what a town should embody, yet guided by a civic leadership in understanding that growth can be an opportunity to strengthen the very ties that bind us. I commend the town of Los Gatos for undertaking a full evaluation of the impacts of Hillbrook's request to modify their conditional use permit. I'm equally proud of the efforts that Hillbrook's administration, its board, and the participating leaders have shown in continuing their good neighbor efforts to proactively communicate with and address the neighborhood's concerns. Indeed, the town's independent study demonstrates a fact-based, thorough, sound representation of what we have asserted all along, that there are no significant environmental impacts created by Hillbrook's request to modify their CUP. In an opportunity to move forward collaboratively, I support the EIR, I support Hillbrook's commitment to strengthen its enduring legacy, and I support the town of Los Gatos. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hakeem. Next up is Chuck Hammers.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Chuck Hammers. I am the chair of the board of Hillbrook School. I'm also a parent of 4 kids, 3 of them which are still there. 4 years ago, I decided to move my family here to Los Gatos. My kids had already been at Hillbrook, but they wanted to be within walking distance. And I then also ended up moving my company headquarters here to Los Gatos because of that. I wanted everything very close. I've got an incredible love for this school. And that's one of the reasons I've been one of the trustees that has championed this cause to add 99 students. What the school's done for my kids has been incredible. And I really want to see us add the ability to bring in more Los Gatos residents to experience what my kids have experienced. Also being a resident very close to Hillbrook, I live on Shannon, it was very important in going through this process that we not impact the people that are in my neighborhood. I'm going to be here for quite a while. With that in mind, I've led over 12 neighbor meetings and gotten to know many of the people here in this room. And ultimately, the biggest thing for me is I want to see this happen, and at the same time, I don't want to see the impact to the neighborhood. I was excited to see the EIR come out as it did. I believe it's legally sound. It's data-driven, which was very important to me, and it was very comprehensive. But ultimately, the big thing was it showed no impact to this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hammers. Now, Steve Benjamin, and then right behind Mr. Benjamin will be Heidi Collins, Jeffrey Barnett, Kenneth Arnett. Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. Steve Benjamin. I live in Saratoga. I have been a trustee of Hillbrook School for 14 years. I was the board chair before Chuck for 7 years, so I was the one who got this whole process started as a board chair, and was also involved with the 2001 CUP. We learned a lot through that process, and I think that learning has helped us and guided us in what we're doing now, which we've been at for 3 years now. So I want to thank the town for undertaking a full evaluation of the impacts of Hillbrook's request to modify the CUP. The town did a detailed study and concluded that there were no significant impacts. I was gratified to see that. I was not surprised. As a master's in transportation engineering from Cornell, I expected that result. I support the findings that there are no impacts. The neighbor concerns have been addressed. and none of the neighbor claims have been validated with actual data. In fact, the EIR shows that there are no significant impacts, and so I urge you to accept the EIR as it's written. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benjamin. I call Heidi Collins.
Hi, I'm Heidi Collins. I live on 119 Ann Arbor Drive. I am the parent of a 9-year-old and a 3-year-old, and very happy to be on Ann Arbor with several other families with small children as well. Wanted to speak tonight in support of the draft EIR. As part of my training and my profession within clinical systems, I regularly review the quality of data and the validity and relevance of the associated conclusions. So going through the draft EIR is something I do every day, similar activities every day at work. I did want to note that real data is never perfect. It never ties neatly. There are always discrepancies. That's what makes it real. It needs to be looked at in the aggregate. You need to look at multiple sources. I feel the draft EIR did do that. When you're looking and evaluating data, you always look to the motivation of those who gathered the data and those who prepared the report. In this case, it was a neutral third party. They wouldn't have any reason to skew to a particular conclusion, and in fact, skewing the data would be harmful to their acceptance within the community as a whole. In my estimation, I may not like all of the conclusions that the DIR presented, but they're valid in the context that was given, which was looking at the additional impact of the added enrollment, not the original conditions of the CUP. So while a lot of valid points were raised tonight, they're not necessarily the intent of the report to evaluate those, but those points could be addressed by the terms of the eventual CUP. One final point I'd like to make, as somebody who grew up in Los Gatos, moved away and came back, though we like to call ourselves a sleepy town, it never really has been. Traffic's always been a problem here. Things that we can do to mitigate it should be mandatory, but it's going to be a fact of life of the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barnett, Jeffrey Barnett.
Thank you very much, members of the commission. My name is Jeffrey Barnett. My wife Moni and I have lived in our house at 101 Mullen Way for over 30 years, and I'm here tonight to speak in favor of the conclusion of the draft EIR that there is no significant environmental impact that was found as a consequence of the detailed and exhaustive studies that were conducted. I would like to say that our neighborhood shares the concerns of Marchmont and the associated neighborhoods. There are our neighbors and our friends. We are concerned about traffic impacts to them, and we're concerned about safety in our community. Nevertheless, the proposed mitigation of opening the Ann Arbor Gate is totally unacceptable. First of all, because there's no significant environmental impact, no mitigation is required under CEQA. But even assuming for argument's sake that there was the need for mitigation, there are a number of cogent reasons why the town of Los Gatos should reject the possibility of opening up the Ann Arbor Gate. First of all, I want to apologize. Our neighborhood association has retained counsel, the Silicon Valley Law Group, and we expect a letter from them before the close of the comment period on the 24th that I expect will provide a significant legal basis that would prevent the town from looking at the Ann Arbor Gate as an alternative for mitigation. But that's not ready tonight, and I'm not prepared to speak to that. Certainly, those of us who bought in the Ann Arbor neighborhood, which was sold as a cul-de-sac neighborhood, had the understanding that the gate would not be opened. Our own real estate agent made an inquiry to the town and was assured that the gate would not be opened for public traffic, and we relied on that in our decision to purchase, and I know we're not the only family in the neighborhood who had that experience. So the gate would opening the gate would violate express and implied understandings between the town and our neighborhood. In addition, the Mitigation is not required because the nature of the application is only to change, the primary nature of the application to modify the CUP is only to change the method of counting the peak traffic hours, not to, nothing further. So, and finally, we believe that Hillbrook has good business reasons for not wanting the gate to be open. They haven't asked for that to be open. I'm running out of time, but I had a couple of clarifications. The tire index, I understand, has been used by the town in other applications. It's used by the city of Palo Alto, as I understand. It's respected. The integrity of Geyer and Geyer, who prepared it, should not be in question. And I'm out of time, so you don't get the third one.
You are, sir, but again, you can always submit your written comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please identify yourself.
Hi, good evening, Planning Commission. Thank you for your support for our community. My name is Ken Arendt. My wife and I moved into 108 Ann Arbor Court. We purchased our home in February of 1974, a little over 41 years ago. We are the original owners, and we and our 3 kids have resided there ever since, of course, until they got married and moved out. I'd like to just present a few historical facts and maybe a little larger picture on some of these issues that I think will be interesting and pertinent to what we've been talking about. Our development was called Fallen Leaf, and when we moved in April of 1974, most of the homes were either under construction or most of the lots were vacant. We did our due diligence before putting our money down, and we asked, as any potential homeowner would be, what's around us? And Wolin Way was still being under construction at the end of Ann Arbor Drive, which was a new street. There was a fence, and that's all there was. And we asked, well, what's going to happen over there? Are you going to continue to build homes? And Bearden Construction said, no, that's private property. It belongs to a small little school called Hillbrook School. This is a cul-de-sac type of environment because Ann Arbor Drive and Wolin Way are really kind of almost the same street. They both enter and exit onto Shannon Road. It just happens to be for postal regulations that you see the two. So we knew what we were buying into when we got there, and for about 10 years after we moved in, there was no change to that configuration, other than homes in our area being built, sold, and occupied. After about 10 years, we were approached by Hillbrook School and the town to consider allowing the construction of an emergency access gate in the fence for emergency access, safety, and construction reasons that might be approved by the town. The gate has never been authorized for student, teacher, staff, or maintenance access. I've heard this evening, and I'm just going to keep my comments short, that it seems like the Ann Arbor Gate is some kind of a magical area in which all problems disappear, and that's not true. We've heard about the growing traffic situation that's coming down Shannon Road, from Hicks Road, from Blossom Hill Road, from all over the place. And it's getting quite bad. In fact, there are not 12 homes that are impacted in Ann Arbor. There are 23 some. And in fact, most of the homes down Shannon Road, Short Road, Amanda, Lansbury, Peacock, Bonnie, hundreds of homes are being impacted by all the extreme traffic that's hitting that intersection. So please consider all of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I'm going to call Dan Shaw, William Maleko, Lee Quintana, Dave DeMaria, Hal Chase. So those are 5 people, if you can be prepared to speak in that order. Mr. Shaw going first.
Thank you. Members of the Commission, my name is Dan Shaw, 15700 Winchester Boulevard. I've been a Hillbrook parent for over a decade and continue today to have a student enrolled at Hillbrook. All 3 of our children have attended the school. Additionally, I've served as a trustee for the past 7 years. Also, since 2002, like Chuck, I have owned and operated my own business here in Los Gatos and located here on purpose because I wanted to be in the town of Los Gatos, both for the community and the schools. My business experiences in the real estate industry, I've completed approvals and entitlements, including CUPs, planned developments, neg decks, and other real estate projects in multiple city and counties in California. I've been a part of lots of neg decks and plan development units. I've worked specifically with the town of Los Gatos on a couple projects, one or two of them related to Hillbrook. I assisted the Hillbrook and worked with the staff in building the Hillbrook new Commons building and library, which was part of our 2001 CUP, which allowed us and is capped on what we can do as far as buildings and growth grow on our campus. Staff was helpful and thorough on that project, just as they've been for the last 3 years on this CUP modification. I would consider myself an expert in the area of land use planning, and that is why I've assisted the school on their real estate matters over the last decade, including this application in the CUP. As someone who has worked in the industry, I anticipated and looked with great enthusiasm to spending a long Saturday afternoon reading a full draft EIR and its affiliated appendices, which I've had to do for compensation before, but this time out of interest. I can attest in the comparison to other reports I reviewed over the last 2 decades that this is a very comprehensive and complete report, including supplemental data from outside independent certified consultants. This effort by the town and Geyer represents that third-party consultants have vigorously and adequately analyzed the potential impacts of the proposed CUP application. I commend the staff and the consultants for their efforts. After reviewing this draft environmental impact report, it is evident that all the experts have concluded that there are no significant impacts, and in fact no impacts as reported in the report. On a personal note, and as a Los Gatos resident, when our family moved and chose Hillbrook over a decade ago, right after the last CUP modification, we were told we needed a carpool. Even with 3 kids, which comprises a carpool within itself, we were asked to find other families. We did. We crammed 5 or 6 into a car for years. About 4 years ago, the school started a trial shuttle. Our family immediately utilized the shuttle at our cost, and we've been full-time users of the shuttle since then. We're now users of the Kiss and Ride in downtown Los Gatos. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Next, William Maleko.
Yes, my name's William Maleko. I reside at 189 Longmeadow Drive, and I'd like to address that portion of the report that deals with sound as it affects the neighbors that border the school that have residences on Longmeadow. The report inaccurately tests the sound levels. It ignores the sports events and special events that occur, especially during after-hours school hours. Testing of the report was done during quiet days of school activity, which had no planned events. The report ignores the idea that sound will increase due to the increased enrollment or the anticipated increased sports activities. It does state that the existing levels that exist today are at or above acceptable levels. It doesn't suggest any mitigation at the locations for the properties along Longmeadow. Thanks. Don't want you to approve the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lee Quintana. Right behind her is going to be Dave DeMaria and Hal Chase. So just so you're prepared, gentlemen.
Lee Quintana, 5 Palm Avenue. I'd like to comment on the alternatives and the fact that the alternative for opening the Ann Arbor Gate was not studied. The reason given that it was politically infeasible, and I would just like to read the quote from CEQA, section 15364, about what feasibility is defined as. Feasibility means capable of being accomplished in a successful manner within a reasonable period of time, taking into account economic, environmental, legal, social, and technical factors. Nowhere in that statement do I see political factors, and therefore I believe that the alternatives of opening the gate, not opening the gate, it needs to be studied because you don't have the information about how it could affect Ann Arbor, and/or Marchmont, how it could benefit Marchmont. That information is missing, and the CEQA is designed to provide information to the public and the decision makers upon which to make their decisions. And without full information about the issues that are involved, I don't believe that that section is adequate. I'd also like to ask some questions about the tire analysis. I did read that section of the traffic report. I tried to find the actual analysis in the appendices. I spent about an hour and a half on the internet going through it all, and I was never able to locate the actual report on the analysis. All I could find was the conclusion in the report, the text of the DER itself. I think that's a deficiency. And also I'd like to add that I was on the Planning Commission the last time the CUP for Hillbrook came up. And it seemed like we addressed that issue 4 or 5 times over a period of 6 or 7 months. And, oops, oh, still there, okay. My recollection was that in the end, the Ann Arbor opening was rejected. I do not remember hearing anything about it not being feasible to open it up from an environmental standpoint or from a legal standpoint. Just that the residents there objected to it, and that was taken as a given. The 150 cars.
Ms. Quintana, yes, your time is up. Again, if you'd like to submit your comments, please do so. Dave DeMaria.
Thank you. Close enough. I'm Dave DeMaria. I live on 131 Ann Arbor Drive. My house is the gate, that magical gate. And I'm speaking for not only myself, but a number of our neighbors. We have, could you all raise your hand, the folks that are here? We have quite a few people are here, and we chose to only have 4 or 5 folks talk to respect everyone's time. So we agree with the conclusions of the AR, and to quote the rest of that section, 5.5.3, from the DER, Marchmont Drive has the capacity to carry additional traffic and it adequately serves the school and neighborhood traffic. In addition, the existing CUP prohibits the use of the Ann Arbor Gate, and the applicant is not proposing to alter school access. Therefore, the Ann Arbor secondary access alternative was considered but rejected, not just for political reasons. Some of my neighbors on Marchmont, or actually all of my neighbors on Marchmont apparently, continue to push at every opportunity they have, to, including this hearing, to have the gate opened and to move the problem from their neighborhood to our neighborhood. Despite this aggression, we continue to support the need for Hillbrook to continue to take concrete steps to improve the traffic situation for our neighbors on Marchmont and the surrounding neighborhoods. I'd like to make a couple short points. First, Hillbrook was here before any of us on Marchmont or Ann Arbor. And as some of my colleagues have said, Marchmont has always been the only access point to Hillbrook. The gate was never closed in 2001. It just was never, ever opened. And secondly, the people on Marchmont bought their homes knowing there was a school there. We bought our homes knowing there was a CUP condition that, quote, said the emergency access road shall not be opened at any time to public or school use. Another point, some of our neighbors are communicating false and misleading information that needs to be corrected. For example, they allege that Ann Arbor access is environmentally superior to Marchmont, since only 11 homes would be impacted. They also say that Hillwood traffic on Marchmont competes with traffic heading towards 3 public schools, and this heavy traffic does not exist in the Ann Arbor area. Both of those are completely untrue. There are 20-plus homes on Ann Arbor and Wallen Way, and many, many more on the surrounding roads that feed into that immediate neighborhood. In addition, we also have very heavy traffic from 3-plus schools in our very neighborhood, and heavy commuter traffic as well. The impact of any change to our neighborhood would be an order of magnitude higher than what it is today versus the incremental impact on Marchmont. As I mentioned in my opening, the draft EIR concludes that Marchmont has the capacity to carry additional traffic, and therefore the possibility of Ann Arbor as a secondary access should be closed. It's time to stop talking about the gate and deal with the real problem of ensuring there's adequate traffic mitigation measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DiMaria. Our last speaker will be Hal Chase.
Oh, boy, that's good words. Good evening. My name is Hal Chase, 107 Ann Arbor Drive. Members of the Planning Commission, thank you for your time that you spend not only this evening with us, but I think twice a month. That's true volunteerism. Thank you. Marchmont has a traffic problem. Marchmont and their surrounding streets have a traffic problem. There's few people in this chambers this evening would disagree with that, no question. It doesn't make sense that we move one neighborhood's traffic problem to another neighborhood. Marchmont and the surrounding streets didn't create their traffic problem. Their traffic problem is created by Hillbrook. Hillbrook needs to fix the traffic problem. They need to fix the traffic problem with your guidance and your requirements within the conditional use permit that they require expanded busing and carpooling. And that's a step in solving Marchmont and the surrounding streets traffic problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chase. All right, so we have come to the end of the public comment period for this hearing. And Mr. Paulson, could you just repeat for the sake of everyone about submitting their written comments?
Sure. That has been stated many times this evening. The close of the comment period for the draft EIR is March 24th. So, March 24th. So anyone who wishes to submit additional comments or written comments of what was stated this evening can do so to the Community Development Department between 8 and 1 by hand, or through Ms. Savage or the Planning Department email site, and or via normal mail.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. So we have closed the public portion of the public hearing, and now I ask you, Mr. Paulson, do we have a report from the Director of Community Development?
Sure. A couple brief items. One, since we last met, the DRC, the Development Review Committee, has not met to take action on any items. The second item I want to report on was on Town Council, which on the 17th discussed the appeal of the Planning Commission's decision denying the two homes on Shannon Road at 16560 Shannon Road. The Town Council remanded those projects back to the Planning Commission for further consideration. Additionally, that evening they discussed the Albright Way initiative and accepted the 9212 report that was prepared regarding the initiative, placed the initiative on the June 3rd, 2014 ballot, and approved a settlement agreement between Los Gatos Citizens for Responsible Development, the town, and the developers. That concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Do any members of the commission have an issue to bring to the attention of the commission? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.